Haruki Shindo says that as he thought, he can cut meat and vegetables without damaging a single cell. He says that this is the skill of a holy swordsman. This is the land of Wani-Kuni in the Owari region. On the streets of the city, people of different races and backgrounds are animatedly interacting with each other. The man opens the door. A girl says, "Welcome to Cat Whiskers." A man with long hair smiles, sitting at a table with a plate of food. The parent thanks for waiting and informs that the dish of the day is fried vegetables. Rin says she's trying, and the man says it's still very tasty and Rin's doing a good job. The man asks why it's so good, and Rin replies that they hired a new employee, and that's probably why the food tasted better. The girl asks which worker exactly. He says that the guy is strange. He has no horns, tail, or scales. His ears are not pointed either, which means he is not an elf, and wonders who he is. The woman says she doesn't really understand either, but she thinks he's responsible and a good person. The man says there are rumors that he killed a dragon and asks what that means. He apparently has no place to live, and they were contacted because of him. He works and lives here. The girl is surprised how he can be a dragon slayer. The girl asks Rinchan to prepare one dish of the day, and Rin agrees to do it now. The girl explains that he's just good at chopping vegetables, and the man asks if he's really that strong. Rex says he's good at cutting vegetables, which is why the dish was so delicious. Haruki is silent and trembling. Haruki Shindo says it's amazing. He explains that a fresh, firm vegetable, soaked in water from root to tip, is made up of every fiber and every cell. Then he asks where it's best to cut it. Haruki Shindo says that this is the skill of the saint. He says he hasn't seen her for a long time and is thinking to himself. He says he is a cook. In a hotel in Tokyo, he asks where he is and who this girl is. The girl asks if he really doesn't remember her. Haruki Shindo says he was definitely going to a cooking competition, and from the very morning, everything went wrong. It started raining. The traffic light showed green. He says it will be a favor for the girl. The girl says, okay. He notices that the game has started and wonders how she got so close. The girl says that Haruki Shindo has the skill of the Saint Swordsman and calls him lucky. She says to use the skill skillfully and asks what kind of skill it is. The dragon roars, and the man looks at it with fear. Haruki Shindo explains that he died and laughs. The dragon says that if you look closely, the guy looks delicious. The guy takes a step forward. The dragon lets out a loud roar. Haruki Shindo looks at the dragon with tension. Haruki Shindo grabs a knife and rushes at the dragon. Splashes and falling debris are depicted. Haruki Shindo says his arm hurts. He reports that he clearly remembers that moment with sharp claws and fangs, as if time had stopped. Haruki Shindo says he immediately knew where to strike. The girl tells him he's lucky. Haruki Shindo explains that he actually died that day and then found himself in this world with the skill of a saint swordsman. He explains that his skill with a knife continues to improve, and when he holds it, it feels as if he can cut through anything. The guy says that apparently heroes who fight the Demon King, the world's best swordsman, and other such individuals gain this skill. Haruki Shindo says that this skill is certainly not meant for cutting vegetables, but who knows? He says that the skill also extends to kitchen appliances. He explains that he's not a hero or a swordsman, but a chef. Haruki Shindo says that if he combines boiling water in a pot and adjusting the heat, he can open a restaurant in this world. He explains that one day he will own his own restaurant, and for that day he has honed his knowledge and skills, possessing the skills and abilities. Haruki announces that he will become the best cook. The girl says they are out of vegetables. He explains that he has already done everything. Haruki Shindo reports that the residents of the town terrorized by the dragon have come out to greet it. He asks what the creature is, whether it's dead or a traveler, and also notices blood. The girl explains that they'll have a lot of fried vegetables today. Haruki explains that he had no home or job and that Rin-san from this establishment took him in. She asks if the guy is new here and explains that he's an elf with round ears. The guy says that there are no humans in this world. Haruki Shindo says he spoke as usual and asks if she liked it. The man says Haruki Shindo brought him something disgusting. The girl watches silently. The man explains that he has the right to self-defense. The girl says that if the guy tries anything, he'll end up behind bars. He says this is an establishment, addressing the girl as a young lady, and grabs her hand. Haruki Shindo tells the man to apologize to her and the dish. The man asks who he is. Haruki Shindo notices the man's black hair and strange ears and asks if it's him. The man says that the dish is like the chef's, and that you can easily get fired for that. Then he slaps the table. The guy asks if Haruka has anything to say. Then he gives a short expression of surprise. Haruki is silent. Haruki clenches his fist. Haruki announces that he will prepare a delicious dish. The girl stands next to him. Haruki Shindo says that when he cooks, the man will leave. The man asks, what? The man says that we agreed, and that's how it will be. The man says he will pretend he hasn't eaten anything and orders a juicy steak to be brought to him. The girl says they absolutely must use the meat they have, and that buying it is forbidden. Haruki Shindo says the steak will be the same no matter who cooks it, and asks if they even have such high-quality meat. The man asks to feed him the most delicious meat. He says that, in this world, the quality of the meat is everything, calling it steak, and also notes the excellent conditions. Haruki asks Rinsan if there's any meat for a steak here. Haruki Shindo says it's homemade and it's the best she's found. The girl says the meat isn't that good and doesn't think anyone of the upper class would eat it, but he says it's fine. Haruki explains that the meat is muscular, red, and slightly marbled and will do just fine. The girl asks if Haruki Shindo can cook this dish. Haruki Shindo asks to borrow some charcoal. Haruki explains that red meat is best cooked over charcoal. Haruki Shindo is surprised and begins cutting with a knife. The girl explains that if thick meat is cooked directly over the coals, it will burn before it's done, so the fire should be lit away from the wind. He says a good cut and skill really help. Haruki Shindo explains that this is an old cooking method that brings out the full flavor of juicy meat without letting the moisture escape, and says it works no matter who's cooking. He says it will be the same and explains that it's a charcoal grilled steak, advising them to eat it while it's still warm. The man is silent. The man presses his lips together. The man explains that it sounds beautiful, but it is no different from simple rotten meat. A man tastes meat. Haruki Shindo reports that this is a perfect roast, and if there is something to say, then say it. The man calls Haruki a bastard, then tells him that he decided to joke about him and orders him to prepare to answer. Haruki asks if it was tasty and demands that the man with the sword keep his promise. The man says that Haruki Shindo is definitely sick and then tells the devil. A man yells something in response to Haruka's sudden attack, which involves him slashing with his sword. The man expresses surprise. Haruki Shindo attacks a man. The man grabs a knife and abruptly puts it down on the table. The man explains that with a table knife, in an instant, Haruki Shindo tells them to leave. He warns that if they resist, they will become one of the ingredients. He says it's good that it's over. He says he doesn't believe anyone actually said that phrase. Then, the girl suddenly lunges at Haruki, screaming his name. Haruki Shindo says that, Rin-san. The girl says it was amazing, and admires Haruka's strength. He reports that he is even among his formidable opponents. He says that the rumor about the Dragon Slayer is true, and such types are damn strong, that's why they are so powerful. Haruki invites Rin-chan to celebrate and asks if she will bring drinks, to which Rin-chan agrees. The girl says the locals like to drink. Haruki Shindo asks if everything is okay, and the girl confirms. Haruki Shindo notices something slipping from her hands, and the girl starts talking to him. He says he's really scared now. The man says this is the first time he's pointed a blade at someone. The girl says that even though he's strong, the woman reports that she has an idea. The girl asks if he's a chef. The girl explains that explains everything. Haruki Shindo says yes, but the girl explains that Haruki Shindo does a good job and is respected by customers because he's a chef. The girl says that the steak looked so delicious and would be very successful if the man had a restaurant. The man explains that it is. Haruki Shindo says the restaurant is also thriving. He explains that this could be his second chance, a chance to realize the dream he couldn't achieve in his previous life. He says everything is fine and suggests they go before the drinks run out. The girl approaches Haruki with a question. The man explains that he wants to have his own shop in this world as a chef. The girl says anything but that. The woman says the report is complete. Then the woman says it means Dragon Slayer. The woman says that these hands can prepare such a luxurious dish. Haruki Shindo smiles. He says, wow. The girl with cat ears admires the dish. The girl says that as soon as Haruki Shindo explained it, she got it right away and asks him to take a look. Haruki Shindo says he just added a few things to the menu, and that's all, and also says the girl has talent. She asks if he really thinks so. The girl asks if she can try it, and Haruki Shindo says, of course, let's try it. Haruki Shindo wishes him bon appetit. The girl tries the food. The girl says the dish is delicious, and the man says it's really good. The girl asks if there's any food left, and the man says yes, then assumes she just ate 300 grams of steak. The girl turns to Haruki and calls him by his name, and Haruki asks what the name of the dish is. Haruki Shindo explains that moloso consists primarily of seafood and rice. He explains that in the past, it was a kind of local cuisine in towns where travelers stopped. The girl says there was a lot of fish there. He says there's a port in their region too, and there's plenty of fish, but it can be a bit of a hassle. He explains that there doesn't seem to be any fish here, but it's on the menu. Haruki explains that they don't sell processed food in this world, and it takes a long time to process fish and shrimp. The girl replies that traveling is great, and she too would like to get out of the city at least once, then asks if he's passed through the main entrance. Haruki explains that he's traveling alone. Haruki Shindo tells Rin that she wasn't going shopping, to which Rin replies, "Nah." He says we need to buy vegetables, eggs, and alcohol, and also says it will be heavy to carry everything. He also explains that there's no need to worry, especially since everyone's already drunk it all. The girl thanks Haruki Shindo for coming with her. Haruki says it will be more fun together and will try to be helpful. Haruki calls the city amazing and explains that it evokes a feeling of nostalgia. The girl asks why. He says that thanks to the Baroness, Lady Tamamo, it's very lively here. The girl reports that he noted the laws dictated by the union and also exempted them from market taxes. Haruki Shindo says that the stone and brick castle is hard to take in, no matter how much you look at it. The girl explains that since childhood, she dreamed of working in the castle, wearing a cute uniform and serving the Baron, admiring the beautiful view. Haruki Shindo explains that the tax is risky, as he sees it. The girl says she and their establishment are doing well, but asks Haruki if he has a dream. Haruki responds with a question, asking if he has a dream. The girl says that everything is complicated, but Haruki Shindo remains silent. Haruki says he's embarrassed to say it, but he wants to open a restaurant. The man calls for Rin-chan. The salesman explains that they've received some rare vegetables. Rin says that's true. Haruki explains that he's lucky to have the same produce here as on Earth. Haruki Shindo says, pumpkin. The man explains that it's a pumpkin. The man asks if it's an eggplant or a starfruit. The man explains that such fruits are rare in their area and offers to try them. The man says, oops. He says, uh-oh, and the girl says, well, what can I do? She wishes her a pleasant meal. The girl with the ears and the tail speaks with surprise, and Haruki Shindo reports with bewilderment. He says it tastes like Goya, and if cooked correctly, it should be delicious. The girl says it's bitter. The man laughs and says it's bitter. Haruki Shindo explains how you can make tempura in deep frying, for example, and thinks it would be good even if you added it to soup. The wolf-headed man laughs and wishes them luck, while another man orders them to disperse and runs away. He says, be careful, he is running here. Haruki Shindo asks to borrow a knife from a woman standing next to a girl with ears. The girl says, eh, and the woman agrees. Haruki Shindo takes the knife. He takes a knife. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't know how to cook, but he wants to learn. He explains that to do so, he first needs to learn how to hold a knife properly. The wolf says, try to catch it. He asks you not to interfere and says, ouch. He catches falling vegetables. A guy punches a man with a wolf's head in the back. The girl says it's impossible, and the man explains that it can't be true. Haruki Shindo says that onions and peppers are vegetables, but tomatoes are fruits. He announces that he is not going to give up, and explains that he will fight to the end. The man falls to the ground, experiencing a strong blow. Haruki Shindo reports that Rin-san is unharmed. Rin-san says everything is fine and asks how Haruki is doing. Haruki Shindo explains that he is fine, but the man tied up with ropes apparently lost consciousness from the impact. The girl says she was very scared. The girl reports that they were given a lot of vegetables. He says that among them are some that he wanted to use. The man explains this. The girl says she's looking forward to Haruki-san's cooking. Haruki Shindo apologizes and offers to cook dinner. The woman with ears says that there is a dragon slayer here. He asks if it is her, and the woman with ears smiles in response. The woman says it's him, and tells him the rumors were true, and he really is a kind-looking man. Haruki Shindo reacts with surprise. He says he wouldn't have thought a man would do that to Izela. The man expresses surprise. Haruki Shindo says he's carefully placing his chopsticks on the table. The girl with cat ears says he shouldn't do that. The man explains he won't let anyone touch the girl. The man with long hair reacts with surprise. Iris Spaniel says she came to apologize and asks not to misunderstand. He asks if it was an apology. Iris Spaniel reports that the commander of the Nine-Tailed Knights, the commander-in-chief of the Imperial Guard, is Iris Spaniel. Haruki Shindo apologizes as the squad leader. The girl and Haruki Shindo are surprised. The girl asks if he looks familiar and clarifies that it's the Knight Commander. The girl thanks him for this and says it's not necessary, then apologizes. He says there's no need to bow his head and explains that he made a mess here last time. The girl asks why he didn't come to apologize himself and yells at Haruki-san. Haruki Shindo remains silent. Haruki Shindo explains that he apologizes again for that incident. Haruki Shindo states that the other person is right. The man informs her that Aizel will be taken into custody for breaking the rules and asks her to understand that he won't be able to apologize. The man explains that this will be their official apology for what happened and asks her to accept it. The woman says it's all her fault, that such behavior goes unnoticed. Haruki Shindo says hello, and the girl with the ears is surprised, asking if this is normal. She explains that these are all their apologies, and is surprised there are so many. The woman in armor says she would now like to discuss another matter. The woman reports that, by order of Lady Tamamo, Baroness of the Owari region of Wano-kuni country, he is suspected of smuggling and espionage. Haruki Shindo announces that he has been ordered to accompany them to the castle. The girl with ears and a tail looks at Haruki in surprise, and the man next to her looks worried. He reports that he is suspected of smuggling and espionage, and that he has been ordered to accompany him to the castle. Haruki Shindo looks ahead. A man stands near the stairs of a building. The image indicates that this is episode 3. He says the marble floor and paper doors look familiar, but at the same time, they're not, and there's something unusual about this castle. He says he left Rin alone and came here, calling himself a dragon slayer. The girl explains. Haruki Shindo talks about what it means to sense a lie and asks if it's some kind of trick or a special skill the girl has. He says he's not a spy and orders her to say so. The man says he understands and asks why she needs him. Haruki Shindo says he certainly expected to be jailed, but he didn't think it would happen like this. The woman says that, to be honest, she herself does not understand all the master's plans, and he advises her to see everything with her own eyes. Haruki Shindo says he has some experience encountering a dragon and wonders if the woman might be a demon or a serpent. The woman reveals that she was the one who brought the dragon to Lady Tamamo. She explains that the woman is the dragon slayer. The girl says there's no need to worry and says she's heard some rumors about him. He calls her a nine-tailed fox. Haruki claims he killed the forest dragon with a knife, not a sword, and that this rumor is circulating even among the clients, so it would be at least pointless to deny it. However, he explains that it was just luck, as he lost control of himself. The woman says it's incredible skill. The woman says he's not lying and laughs. Haruki Shindo reveals that his master can sense even the slightest lie and explains that he doesn't need to mention the holy swordsman skill. He tells him that Aizel, though a bit dim-witted, is still one of his best guards and asks if he's ever lost to one of his guards. He also asks if the man wants to say he defeated him with a simple knife. The man says he's remembered that about Aizel. The woman asks Haruki Shindo to tell her who he really is. Haruki Shindo remains silent, then explains that he is a chef, not a swordsman. The woman says that this is not a lie at all, but the most obvious truth for her. He says that the woman is not bad. The woman laughs and calls Haruki by name. The woman reports to work here. Haruki Shindo says he can't believe it. The woman says that, of course, it would be better to be a swordsman, but a cook who killed a dragon with a knife is at least interesting, and adds that, well, Haruki tells him to fight Eri. Eri explains that if he wins, he'll become a chef, and if he loses, he'll vow to join her guard as a swordsman. Haruki Shindo says he can fight a dragon slayer. The woman says to thank Ms. Tamamo for the wooden swords. The man explains it's a joke, as he doesn't really understand his own skill. The man says that if he wins, he'll become a cook, and if not, a guard, adding that he has no right to refuse. The woman states that she has no record of passing the checkpoint, or that Haruki Shindo passed it on the ship, and adds that his sword skills suggest he is a spy. He says that if he's working undercover, then that girl from the diner isn't so simple either. Haruki Shindo informs me that her target is definitely me. The woman says that if she just does as she says, Rin-san will be fine too. He says he doesn't have much of a choice and won't have to work as a guard, and if he wins, he'll be able to open a restaurant in the future. He says that if he works for her, he'll definitely be able to open a restaurant. Haruki Shindo says he can see the other guy is already excited, and that it wouldn't be all that interesting if he weren't serious. Haruki Shindo says one must believe in skill and explains that his body contains the skills of many holy swordsmen of this world. He says he remembers the feeling and explains that it felt like he only used the skill twice, against the dragon and against the guards. Haruki Shindo says that he made mistakes and did it time after time, and it's all thanks to Rin-san, so he can't lose. Warriors and heroes eventually strove for incredible power, and all their skills were transferred to him as the holy swordsman skill. He says he didn't crave power, but all their achievements ultimately came to him. The guy explains that the ways they use their powers vary, but they all share the same desire to reach the top, and that it's no coincidence that he acquired this particular skill. He says that, using this power, he'll add knife handling as another skill. Tamamo announces that if Haruki wins, he'll work in her kitchen, and Haruki says he doesn't particularly want to be beaten. Tamamo laughs, calls it interesting, and promises to make Haruki a chef if he wins. The woman tells Eri that if she loses to him, it will be a disgrace to all knights, and asks if she understands this. Haruki Shindo listens. Iris says that although the challenge is insistent, she will accept it with honor. Iris explains that she is a decorated knight and commander of the guard, the Silver Wolf Iris, and is ready for battle. The man asks what she said. The girl says she's a sous chef at the new Tokyo hotel and is ready, and Haruki Shindo says, attack. The woman smiles. The man announces that they are ready. He and the man with the sword stand opposite each other. The girl signals for the fight to begin. A man with a sword prepares for battle. Haruki Shindo and the girl engage in combat, clashing weapons. He says that he didn't blink and stopped her attack with an eye, and the girl says that he is strong. Haruki Shindo says then, how do you like that? He wonders if she's aiming for lethal points, which are easy to spot. He says that she is indeed a dangerous opponent. Then, a collision of wooden objects is shown. Haruki Shindo explains that he's just a newbie and would appreciate a little rein-in. The woman tells him not to act like a fool and calls him a newbie, then asks if he wasn't holding back. Haruki remains silent, and the man says he's simply unsure if he'll lose control. Haruki explains that he's clear and thanks me for my concern. The woman draws her sword from its sheath. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't understand what's happening and says he thinks there's no point in holding back now. The woman says that she is the mistress of this house and invites him in. He says that he came here at the invitation. Haruki Shindo says he's serious and suggests doing what he thinks is right, without worrying. The girl explains that she doesn't intend to lose either, however. She lowers her feet to the ground. Haruki Shindo stands with a large sword. He approaches a girl who is standing in high heels and says that he is giving her advice not to hold back. The woman with the ears announces that she will now cover the man, and she strikes with her sword. Then, the woman with the ears and the man prepare for combat together, moving forward with swords in hand. Haruki Shindo strikes with his sword, and the man stands with his sword in a fighting stance. The girl watches with alarm. Then a crack appears in the girl's armor, and her foot hits the ground. The woman says they even destroyed Genbu's armor. He says it's wonderful. The man congratulates her and says that, as promised, he'll be working in her kitchen. Haruki Shindo says a chef is stronger than a knight. The girl says that should be enough, and sighs. She says it's only been a week, but it's already starting to feel a bit lonely. The girl asks if he's okay, and he remains silent. Tamamo informs him that this is their kitchen. Haruki asks Tamamo why she's here. Tamamo tells him not to worry, and asks Sariya if she's here by chance. The man asks Tamamo if something's wrong. Haruki explains that although he saw the chimney from the street, they do have a stove. Sariya asks who the man is, and is told that the head chef at Shuzurao Castle is Sariya Delphini. The woman says she has a conversation with Sariya. Haruki explains that it is Sariya, the castle's head chef. The woman introduces Sariya to Haruki and the woman asks if something happened because of the conversation, then explains that the kitchen is now under his management and is surprised. Haruki Shindo says they just had a bet. He asks her to wait and says he didn't mean to. Ms. Tanamo asks if he could leave, then explains that she already said she'll make him a chef. The girl confirms this with the words, "Yeah, right." The man remains silent. Haruki Shindo says that if there are suddenly two of them, everyone will only get confused and laughs. He says that this was a mistake from the very beginning. The woman says she can't entrust the management of the kitchen to some stranger and asks why him. He says that even though they agreed, now he can't agree. Haruki says it's as she said, and that he just needs the freedom to use the kitchen. The woman says there's no need to kick Sariya-san out. Haruki says he now understands what kind of guy he is. The woman says that this is no longer negotiable because it's completely uninteresting. The man says it's uninteresting. So, the woman asks who will be the chef's boss. The man is surprised and repeats the word, boss. Several chefs in hats explain that it seems to be a title similar to chef. The woman says that if you have an idea, you shouldn't keep quiet. The man replies that maybe the executive chef. The man says this hesitantly. The woman explains that from now on, Haruki will be the executive chef and Sariya will be his assistant. The woman is happy that everything is wonderful now and says. The woman says there's nothing wonderful about it. Then she says that, as a cook, she also has no desire to lose. Haruki Shindo says he wants to see for himself that he's worthy of standing above her. The man says he's worthy of standing above her. The woman says she won't force Haruki. Haruki asks what the woman will say. The woman replies, "Ni." The guy says that his interlocutor also has pride, and at the same time thinks that she was counting on this from the very beginning. The woman asks Haruki Shindo if he agrees. Haruki Shindo says he feels sorry for Sariya-san, but when it comes to competition, as a chef, he won't hold back. He explains that what he recently demonstrated was only his holy sword skill. The woman informs them that there's not much time left before the competition itself. The man explains that they need to prepare the ingredients and check their quality. Haruki Shindo tells Sariya to prepare the main course for him and to be attentive, and Sariya asks him to leave it to her. In the kitchen, a woman announces that there will be a lot of work today and asks everyone to be careful. A man explains that they need to get the orders ready on time and warns of potential complications. The woman explains that if everyone works together, they'll get through it without any problems. The man emphasizes the importance of staying focused and supporting each other. Haruki Shindo says sorry for the wait. The man says it's fried heavenly fish. He says he loves fried fish, and the woman just says, wow. Haruki Shindo says the roasting imparts such a rich, nuanced flavor to the dish. He adds that the garnish is also top-notch, and the seasonal ingredients are perfectly chosen, with a nice color scheme. Haruki Shindo explains that he didn't previously know the level of skill of the chefs here, but now he sees that it's not. The woman explains that a lot depends on the taste of this dish, and that something more sophisticated could have been chosen. The girl explains that there's no need for that, because perfectly cooked fish doesn't need any extra accompaniments. The woman says that's well said, and that it's what she expected from her chef. Haruki Shindo says he understands her perfectly. He reports that the situation is similar to the case with Aizel, when he also decided to show off his skills. Haruki Shindo says he has many opponents. He says that he can use other ingredients, and the girl asks if this is true. The woman says they need to see what they have first and asks if the man will show them where the food is stored. The man tells her to follow him. The woman asks her to wait until he leaves. The woman tells Sariya that this dish doesn't need anything else. Sariya confirms that it's already perfectly cooked. The woman asks Haruki to try the dish and suggests using only what Sariya used. Haruki Shindo speaks clearly and confirms understanding, and the woman says that he understands and offers to rely on her. The woman says that they should both feed her and send her home, and the girl says that a lot of interesting things have happened today. The woman is preparing food. Haruki says there shouldn't be any unnecessary movements, even in his old world. Such fish is rare. He explains that his problem now is that he's not particularly familiar with cooking such fish. The guy says the fish looks a bit like a flying fish. Haruki says it's not a completely different world and wonders if it really can fly. The girl says she's made a dish. Haruki apologizes, and the girl asks him not to misunderstand and explains that it was made so he could. Haruki Shindo reports that since arriving here, he hasn't eaten anything but his own cooking and rinsons. Haruki Shindo eats with chopsticks. He explains that it's very difficult to achieve such a delicate flavor, and if the goal is to somehow diversify the dish, then you can use a variety of sauces, although there is a risk of ruining the dish, depriving it of all its beneficial properties, but the flavor will still remain. Then he says that it's very good and calls it incredible. The woman says their mistress sometimes likes to hold completely pointless competitions for fun, and if he gives in now, she'll let him work under her direction. The man remains silent. The woman says everything is fine. Haruki Shindo asks if there are any heavenly fish in there, and if they can be used, to which the woman replies, yes. The woman asks if they have any wood shavings and says there must be some somewhere. She wonders what Haruki is going to do with all this kit since she prepared. He says he's a little scared, but he has to prove himself. He then explains that it's a little awkward to talk about it. The man is surprised that he gutted the fish so quickly and asks what it means. He explains that it's just his skills. The man says it's a fragrant fumée de poisson, made from heavenly fish, and explains that fumée is a concentrated broth made from meat and fish products using a French cooking method. The woman says it's interesting and asks if anyone decided to add anything to the soup. Haruki Shindo says he'll try it. The woman tastes the food. The woman says it can't be. The man with the eye patch replies, and the boy and girl listen. The girl announces that Haruki will win this fight. The woman says that if they want to understand her decision, they should try. The man says he understands, and the woman responds with surprise. The woman says that someone like her shouldn't eat from the same plate as her mistress, but Haruki Shindo allows her to eat. The man apologizes. The girl tries food with chopsticks, then closes her eyes and suddenly opens them in surprise. Haruki explains that he used an unusual flavor, even though he can clearly taste the fish, and asks what kind of soup it is, since it was given such a strange name. The man asks Haruki to explain and find out what he used. Haruki explains that fumée de poisson is a broth made from fish. The girl asks what broth is. Haruki explains that bones are used to make broth, but the flavor of the broth can differ significantly from the taste of the fish itself, so he used other parts of the ingredient as well. The girl says that she smoked it. Haruki Shindo explains that the leftovers that retained the aroma were smoked just long enough to preserve the aroma of the heavenly fish, and if you cook it all together with aromatic vegetables, the flavor will transfer into the broth. The woman says it's a difficult task to prepare, but he found a very simple solution by adding it all to the broth. The woman laughs and calls Haruki an interesting person, surprised that he put so much effort into one broth. The woman admits defeat. Haruki reports that Fume, day. The woman says the world is amazing and invites Saria to ask questions right now if she wants. The woman explains that if she doesn't mind, she asks what their bet was. Haruki Shindo reacts to this. The woman says this pizza is absolutely delicious, and he says the pizza shape suits her very well and then apologizes for bothering her. The man says that this man. A few days later, the woman informs him that the guy now works for her and should act accordingly. The woman asks how things are in the kitchen and if everyone is getting along. Haruki Shindo explains that this is probably because Saria-san was understanding about the situation and adds that mutual respect is crucial for a smooth workflow. The woman says that she can ask for anything as a reward and notes that the pizza was good and the morning French toast was very welcome. He says that, apparently, they are learning to trust each other and confirms this with the word yes. Tamamo says she doesn't need more, that she's happy with the fact that she can work here and declines the offer. Haruki explains that it was his thanks for the food. The guy apologizes and asks if Haruki is with Tamamo. Tamamo asks if something happened. Haruki says that an urgent message has arrived. The woman reports that someone is at the gate shouting that Haruki Shindo must be released. Haruki Shindo says that if she's looking for him among all the swordsmen she knows, then what happened there? She thanks him for his attention. Haruki Shindo asks. The girl demands he return it, claiming it's here, and Rin says she's already sent for it. The boy calls out to Rin. The girl breathes heavily. Haruki Shindo apologizes for this. The girl hugs him tightly and screams his name. The girl says she was very happy when he was accused of spying and taken away from here. She had already begun to think that he had been killed or would soon be killed because he hadn't returned. The man reports. The girl asks what kind of clothes these are and says that she came to call them from here. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't think he punished Aizel enough initially and turns to Rin-san. The woman asks what all the noise is about. Rin-san, astonished, calls the woman Ms. Tamamo, and the woman replies that she doesn't understand who she is. The girl says she's come to return Haruki-san and is also returning something. The woman informs him that Haruki is now hers and asks if the girl will insist that he belongs to her. Haruki explains that it's clear the girl is from the diner. The girl says that she even has an official decree from the union, and the woman explains that Haruki-san is her employee. The woman says that there are grounds, and that is understandable. The woman says she's partly to blame for the incident with Aizel and asks what she should do. Haruki Shindo remains silent. The girl asks Haruki how he likes her outfit. Haruki says it looks great. The man asks if that's normal since there's always a store, and the girl confirms it is. Haruki explains that the reward wasn't necessarily an item, noting that it was 10 days ago. Haruki Shindo says he'd like to take extra days off sometimes to help Rin-san with the restaurant. The woman explains that she thinks there's nothing wrong with them seeing each other occasionally, adding that then, he and the girl listen as the woman says that they will simply work here together. Haruki Shindo says that Ms. Tamamo has misunderstood everything. Ms. Tamamo explains that she found an assistant and ended up here, which is simply perfect, and that working in this castle has been her long-time dream. She loves cooking and interacting with visitors. The girl says she's also inspired by her work as a maid, and he says courage is very important and that the customers have also supported him. He explains that he's glad the girl is doing well, but he doesn't understand her, and nothing short of opening a restaurant will satisfy him. The guy asks who it is and if the girl is new. The girl says her name is Rin and welcomes the acquaintance, to which the guy agrees. The girl thanks the guy for wasting his wish on her, and the guy says it's not a burden if it makes him happy. Saria reveals that she's a cook and Haruki's subordinate, and Haruki warns her not to cross him. Haruki says Saria mentioned cutting food beautifully and asks her to elaborate. Haruki Shindo tells her to watch carefully and shows her how to cut properly. The girl says she was too fast and didn't see anything, and the other girl says, "Wow," in admiration. Haruki Shindo apologizes and explains that the skill is now activated almost subconsciously, so he'll try to go slower. A boy and a woman say that Haruki-san is here. The boy is surprised and asks, "What's this really?" He says that Ms. Tamamo is calling him, and the girl with the ears is happy to have found him. He's thinking about having dinner together. The woman announces that the eldest son of the noble family of Risport is arriving. Haruki Shindo says that, if you think about it, the woman is also a noblewoman. The woman explains that there are many people similar to her in their way of life, who also manage their assigned territories. She explains that depending on the family's status, the woman explains that trade is a very profitable business, so the lady is also a merchant. She explains that the Risport family is very important among the nobility. Their father struck gold, and since then the family has been trying to increase its wealth. He asks what the Risport family does. The woman. The woman explains that her eldest son, Riyad, likes everything new and popular and thinks they'll find common ground. Haruki says he apparently thinks there's no such thing as normal civilization in the provinces. The woman tells Haruki he should give him a run for his money. The woman says she made him disappear right before her eyes. Haruki Shindo says he thinks it's a good idea. He says that the port turned out to be even bigger than he imagined and tells Surya-san that there are such big ships here. Haruki Shindo reports that these are ships from Osudia and says there must be foreign countries here too. The girl explains that they are in the country of Owari, but it's more of a region, and clarifies that this is the country of Vanikuni. Haruki Shindo explains that he heard from Rinsan about the upcoming. He says that sometimes things even children know can be mind-boggling. He says they can't just give up on Osudia and Akitoria products. He explains that he believes they should market unique products from Owari, like freshly caught seafood. The woman says there's nothing worse than imports, because they're paying for goods they can get themselves. Haruki Shindo explains that, frankly, it's strange. He just looks at the products, and it makes him happy. He reports that it's completely invisible. The woman explains that she didn't expect anything different, since there isn't much of a selection of products here, although she says that crabs of such a small size taste very good, and besides, now is their peak season. The woman says that fully grown crabs can reach a weight even greater than hers, but Haruki Shindo says that if that's the case, then he won't be considered a monster, and is surprised. The man explains what's next. The man explains that they need to pack about 5 times what he's carrying, calling him a wimp. The man says that's impossible. Leard Risport says the journey here was quite an adventure, but he knew what he had to endure to reach this backwater. The girl says it's a backwater and asks for no offense. The woman says she's taking her leave now and advises him to be more vigilant about his territory. The man says that, compared to the capital, this place is pure hell. The guy in the background says he's a real idiot. Haruki Shindo wonders if one ring will be enough to. A woman thanks a man for coming to this hellish place to visit her. The man remarks that the journey must have been long and offers to join him at the table. The woman, smiling, says she's interested in trying the food being prepared there. The man recalls feeling naked right away. The man says that since he's an aristocrat, he should show his manners, and if it's not tasty, he'll politely try a spoonful. The woman replies that she'll do something about it. The man with the turban says, "Ha, so what?" Haruki says, "As always, excellent," and calls the man a good boy. The woman thanks him. The man asks if Haruki Shindo would like to eat and explains that there's probably plenty of that kind of food in the capital. He explains that on Haruki's right is crab with sliced cabbage and rice sticks. On the left is a cocktail with sliced abalone and kutaka mushrooms, and that's all. The man says he's never heard such names before and is surprised that food is served in glasses. He explains that a mystical taste and unusual aroma permeate his taste buds. The man tastes the food with a spoon. Haruki Shindo explains that the cocktail, shellfish, and mushrooms were pre-dipped in Jule's wine, with a touch of lemon juice added for a slight tartness, and the alcohol was intended to create the sensation of bursting fish eggs in the mouth. The woman reports that all the seafood. The woman says the port is very close to her palace, but even so, eating the freshest seafood in these lands is a great luxury. He says he's never seen seafood prepared like this. The man reports that the dish feels new, unusual, visually, tastefully, and tactilely. The woman laughs and says that it seems the aristocrat from the capital did like something after all. The man asks why and explains that something like, the man says that if this continues, the village fox will simply beat him up and send him home, and if anyone finds out, his father and sister will mock him for a long time. The woman says they'll deal the final blow and thinks it's time to move on to the main course. The man reacts to. The man says he needs to come up with something to regain his position as the leader, and he realizes the situation is critical. He says it turns out everything he ate wasn't even the main course, and that anytime soon she'll take the initiative to meet and engage in dialogue away from him. The man says he definitely brought a souvenir. The woman says, "Ha," and the man says that what he's about to show you is also a rarity in the capital and worth its weight in gold. The man explains that it's a phoenix egg. The woman says she can't afford to be weak. Haruki Shindo says it's a beautiful egg with what appears to be a yolk showing and calls it amazing. The man says the last dish upset his stomach a bit, but he thinks he has room for one more. The woman says that since he brought an egg, he can use it as he stands nearby. The man says to take this egg for the main course and try making something he's never seen before. Haruki Shindo and the woman react to this. The guy says to take an egg for the main course and try to cook something he's never seen before. The woman explains that this idiot, it turns out, at least knows how to cook something. The woman explains that the hallmark of working at the castle is unusual and surprising commissions. Haruki asks if she can handle it, thinking it would be interesting. The man explains that he will do as the woman wishes. Haruki Shindo asks for some time. He says it's a phoenix egg. The woman says they've been given something strange again. Haruki Shindo apologizes and says he doesn't know what to do with it either. The girl explains that it's a very rare ingredient in the markets and yet still quite a curiosity. The woman explains that those living in the eastern gorges. He explains that these are such wonderful eggs and points at them with his finger. The woman says that these eggs are the most delicate in the world to use, and Haruki Shindo reports that the deep and rich flavor of the yolk is very popular among gourmets. The girl says that's clear and asks what the guy is going to do, since there aren't many dishes in which eggs play a leading role. He explains that there are very few such dishes. Haruki Shindo explains that although the egg is excellent, there are very few cooking options with its main role, and he cannot simply cook it fried. And if he decides to make a duet of this egg with meat or fish, then Liard-san will find a reason to reproach, because with such a duet it is necessary to highlight. The woman explains that he usually scolds her for her food, so she can't say for sure, but he always drinks alcohol after her meal. He says the alcohol is good, and they can find it even here. Haruki Shindo says that if there's anything in this castle, he'll bring it if needed. The man apologizes for the wait. The girl asks, what if? The man turns to the girl named Seria-san and begins talking. The girl explains that there's something in this castle. Haruki reports that the other person is quicker than he expected. The person asks if Haruki was able to come up with a use for his souvenir. He explains that it might be delicious, but not something he's never seen before, and that the only dishes where eggs play a major role are fried eggs and hard-boiled eggs. Haruki says he kept thinking the other guy was up to something and laughs at the man's comment about scrambled eggs. The man laughs and says he'll try Haruki's scrambled eggs. The man asks what Haruki is doing and orders him to go to the kitchen, reminding him that he was planning on making scrambled eggs. A woman and a man are surprised by what's happening. The man, with a serious expression, notices something. Chopsticks are stirring the contents of a bowl. A man says it's impossible to make scrambled eggs without fire. He reports that the scrambled eggs were cooked without fire, along with rare ham and toast. The man is surprised that this was done without fire at all. Haruki Shindo says to scoop up some egg with toast and try it. The man says that since everything is on the table, you should try it. The man says it's delicious and tastes like scrambled eggs, explaining that since the egg was cooked without heat, it's not hot, but it still tastes the same as scrambled eggs. And to complement it, crispy toast was used along with the ham to create the perfect picture of the dish. The woman explains that frying an egg isn't the only way to harden the whites. There's another method, which involves the use of concentrated alcohol. The man with the mustache reports that the smell screams alcohol. Haruki Shindo explains that stay. The man reports that they obtained a 90-proof spirit with enough alcohol content to make scrambled eggs without heat, and it's this alcohol that leaves a pleasant aftertaste. He explains that the delicate flavor of the egg doesn't overpower the strong smell of alcohol, leaving a pleasant feeling of mild intoxication. The man explains that he does have the dignity of this title and that he couldn't lie to the face of the chef of such a wonderful dish, and if he didn't recognize this dish, he wouldn't be considered a gourmet. He explains that the dish is something everyone has tried, but nevertheless, being delicious, it isn't necessarily. Haruki Shindo says he can only say bravo, and Tamamo says she has a great cook. A woman tries a dish. A man asks how it went and says it was excellent. The woman explains that only a man could have come up with such a dish, and the man replies that it couldn't have been any other way. Haruki Shindo reports that it's 40-proof alcohol, and notes Seria-san's strength. He explains that every chef must be steadfast in his resistance to alcohol. The girl explains that when distilled, alcohol even changes the taste. Haruki Shindo explains that since this is his first encounter with distilled alcohol, he says it's illegal in his area and asks if that's true. The woman says that such countries exist, and since the alcohol here is good, it would be a sin not to drink it to the victory. He explains that it's 40 grams, but then gives up on the idea. They talk together. In Haruka Shindo's room, he lies on the bed, arms and legs spread out. The text indicates that this is Haruka's room inside the castle. He says there's no need to worry about today's meeting because everything went well. He explains that the bed is great and much better than the one in the old apartment. He reports that his life is going well and his salary is big, although Tamamo-san is pressuring him. Haruki Shindo says that after being forcibly thrown into this other world, he was finally able to become a chef, and that is truly a great blessing. He explains that he has Tamamo-san to thank for his current life. Haruki asks if Rin is there, and Rin says she found Haruki. Rin explains that they had a big, problematic person at Tamamo's office today and asks if everything was okay since Haruki was called to see her in the middle of the day. Haruki confirms that everything was okay. The girl says they've lived together under the same roof for so long and asks if Haruki Shindo got a cool room, and he says it's great, and he's even jealous because he shares his room with another girl. Haruki Shindo explains that the maid dorm has one too. He asks if the girl can go out at all and if they have some kind of curfew. The girl says everything is under control. She explains that their head maid is a terrible person, but when needed, the girls save her. For example, right now they put Saint Scent. Haruki says he's interested, but when he asks in the morning, the girl is usually busy, and he's glad she wanted to talk so much. The girl explains that she managed to sneak right past the guard and asks him not to do it again, then happily says she can now listen to his story. The girl is delighted. Haruki Shindo explains that it's all thanks to Sari-san. They went to the market together, and she, as an experienced cook, selected only the best ingredients. The girl remains silent. Haruki Shindo asks if something happened. The girl explains that, no, it just turns out he's quite close. He says he was worried at first that they wouldn't have a good relationship, but now he's glad they become friends. The girl replies that she's very happy for him. She looks at him and calls him a blockhead. He asks why. The girl explains that grocery shopping is also a chore. Haruki says, see you tomorrow. The girl wishes Haruki sweet dreams. The girl says she is a bad girl. Haruki Shindo says it's majestic. The boy explains that all cows in this world are big, but the man replies that of course not. He explains that it was a gift from Lady Tamamo and a very high-quality specimen. He explains that it wasn't just an ordinary cow, but a fighting one and quite rare, and it seems that Lady Iris won. Haruki Shindo reports that Ms. Tamamo requested it be ready for dinner. The girl asks if it's for tonight's dinner. Haruki Shindo confirms that it is, adding that it's not even dressed. The girl asks if it's his. Haruki Shindo confirms. He says that even in another world, bosses never think about their subjects, and that he'll have to try hard. The girl suggests trying to make it in time for dinner and surprise the mistress. The man reacts with surprise and calls the girl over. The girl asks if the guy is going to cut with a kitchen knife, and Haruki Shindo says the meat is good and he's had a lucky chance to butcher it. The man asks for a slight retreat. He looks forward with concentration, then abruptly says that the target is here. The girl and Haruki Shindo watch the dark figure land. Haruki Shindo says he's long since gotten used to his skill, and at the same time, he picks up a knife. He states that his use of the swordmaster skill cannot be called proper use, and says that he has never seen any chef with the same skill. The voice says that this is why he will show that his skill is no less useful here. The man reports that these are ribs, fillets, thighs, and drumsticks. Haruki Shindo says that they are most likely heavy in skill and explains that they would condemn him, shaking his head. He says that so be it. He decided a long time ago who he wants to be and what he wants to do, and that is to become a chef. Haruki Shindo says he didn't chop the carcass up in an instant, but cut it up exactly as he planned, and at a speed that's impossible to follow. The girl asks if he chopped the carcass up in an instant. The man cuts the carcass up. A girl and a guy with ears and a tail are looking at a large piece of meat. The girl and guy with ears and a tail express surprise. He explains that the meat needs to be separated into tendons and the fat trimmed off. Haruki Shindo says he received the meat. The man drops the meat and says it was an oversight. The woman turns to Sariya-san. He is shown against the backdrop of the castle, saying that it looks like they'll make it in time for lunch. Haruki Shindo says it's beef fillet steak between sliced pain d'épices. The woman is silent. The woman says the guy is clearly very ambitious and thinks that bringing something early also counts as late, only in reverse, so she should punish him. Haruki Shindo apologizes. The girl says that this is a rather interesting dish, just like multi-layered meat. Haruki reports that the fillet was used along with liver and pain to pieces bread, which is a bread seasoned with hot spices, creating a so-called sandwich. He explains that the liver was foie gras, which is the liver of a goose raised in. Haruki announces that they've received a new, fresh batch, so they've decided to pair it with beef. The woman says it's wonderful, and even though girls are squeamish about eating monstrous meat, she'd be happy to try it. Haruki asks the man if he knows why he's not squeamish, and the man replies that he doesn't. The guy asks if Haruki Shindo has seen that cow, and tells him that right now that monster is gracing his dinner table as the main dish, and explains that this is precisely the fact that Haruki Shindo says that with such thin arms, he would never be able to defeat it. The woman says it gives her wonderful feelings. The girl says the sweetness of the bread and its spiciness, along with the aroma of butter, pair perfectly with the velvety meat and goose liver. Haruki Shindo remains silent. The woman says it's excellent and calls the find amazing. He explains that the toughness and flavor of the meat depends heavily on where it's sourced, and at this time he chose the part between the 11th and 13th ribs, which is the meatiest and most tender. The woman says that meat is a complex thing, and being a chef must be tough. She explains that the part of the tenderloin that's eaten consists of muscle tissue that's almost never used, and is therefore very tender. She also explains that this part of the tenderloin makes up only 3% of the entire edible portion of the monster and is called. The woman says the meat is truly wonderful and befitting her status. She says she's giving the remaining meat as a reward and that the man has lifted her spirits. Haruki Shindo tells the man to use the meat as he wishes and thanks him. The man silently thanks her, but doesn't mean it. The man says it's delicious and asks what it is. The man explains that Legitimamo rewards her subjects well for their hard work and that an elite guard like him requires high-quality food. The man asks if the boy has been punished recently. The boy explains that the punishment took longer than usual for some reason and asks. Haruki Shindo explains that the name of the dish, lamfredato with stewed vegetables, is written in their language, but he can't understand it. He reports that the dish contains organs, but there's no smell at all. Haruki Shindo says the dish tastes different from usual and was delicious. The wolf announces that a new head of the kitchen has recently been appointed and explains that he is definitely called the head chef, though his name is strange. The man with the pointy ears says he must personally thank the new head chef and is glad he's been noticed, then calls the new chef over. The wolf says he told them to go and explains that the guy can't stop annoying everyone around him. The girl asks the guy to calm down. Haruki Shindo says he assumed it would be this man who called him and that it wasn't the first time. The man replies that he forgot he asked for the chef and asks him not to tell him anything. He says he's the chef at this castle and became one while the other man was serving his sentence. The man says he was at fault back then. The guy tells you that you need to apologize to Rin-san, not him. The man is precise and explains that no one could have imagined that the guy would become the boss in the kitchen. Haruki Shindo says it's no wonder. The man asks if Haruki liked the dish but has trouble answering. The man explains that the portions are small and calls Haruki a moron. The top right man says the chef was amazing today, and he says he doesn't understand what that was all about. A man reports that he decided to braid his horse's mane out of frustration. The man explains that the horse doesn't understand what's happening. Haruki Shindo reports that this is the 8th chapter. The woman says it's delicious as always, but his dish will soon add a lot of extra pounds to her body, and yet she eats it with pleasure. He explains that this time the dessert is sugar-free, meaning it has relatively fewer calories, making it harder to gain weight. The woman asks. A woman asks if there are desserts that cure illnesses and notices that all the mass is going into her chest. Haruki Shindo says that food can have that effect and explains that while he has some knowledge of special dietary treatments, it would hinder her development. The woman says that thanks to Liard Shindo, she'll be introduced to a gathering place for many rich old farts. The man says that's exactly it and turns to Liard Shindo. Haruki Shindo tells me this is probably just an excuse to get me to cook for these rich people. The girl tells him she's planning on preparing the banquet hall. The man explains that they need something elegant that would wow everyone at the dinner party and asks if X understands. He says that the eggs he prepared for Liard-san's reception won't do, and he needs something strong that will serve as the main course. He explains that the trick with the eggs would work to create surprise, but he won't be able to use it as the main course in. The woman suggests choosing something meat or fish and leaves this question to Haruki Shindo, who hopes that he will surprise her this time too. The girl says that delicious food disappears so quickly and thanks him for it. He laughs and says he appreciates the compliment. The girl thanks him again for the food. Iris says no thanks and, as usual, it was delicious, whatever it was. Haruki says it was a frittata, thank you, he's happy. Iris asks when Haruki will be joining their ranks, explaining that he can also be a cook. Haruki says they've already discussed this. Haruki says he can only focus on one thing at a time and that the other guy is missing out on a lot. The girl apologizes for keeping up with Haruki. Haruki explains that just watching such a strong man chop vegetables makes you think about. Haruki Shindo says he can't argue and laughs, and also says that he would probably be very popular in the Imperial Guard. He explains that this is a job where he'll be using a knife to something completely different from vegetables, and says he definitely wouldn't want to be associated with that kind of work. The girl addresses him, calling him commander. A woman asks Haruki Shindo if he wants to join the Imperial Guard and what he thinks about it. Haruki Shindo replies that he doesn't. The woman explains that she thinks the guards are cool and adds that they get a good salary. Haruki, he says that cooks aren't cool. The girl explains that she didn't say they weren't cool and laughs. She explains that being in the military means constantly testing your strength against others, and getting into the Imperial Guard is a dream for many. Haruki Shindo says it's true that he'd never want to use his skill for its intended purpose, and explains that he has that ability. Rin asks if she'd like Haruki to become a warrior. Haruki says that if he becomes a warrior, they'll never be able to see each other again, adding that it's a very dangerous profession and they only have one life. The girl says that if he really wants to become a warrior, she'll support his choice, but if he has even the slightest doubt, it's best not to do it. Haruki says it must be hard being such a popular chef. The girl laughs and tells him she's been assigned to be the cook for an upcoming dinner party. Haruki asks what a dinner party is. The girl explains it's something like a big celebration, and Tamamamo-san decides that. The girl says that number one is only meat, especially as a main course. Haruki Shindo explains that the dish will be just right for an aristocrat status, and says that the girl's food is the most delicious in the world, so there's no need to worry. The girl confirms this, saying that you see. The girl with the ears shouts for everyone to pay attention and announces that all warriors need to gather here. He thanks her for the words and says he's motivated, then promises to try harder. The man with short dark hair notices that something's wrong. The boy apologizes for disturbing her and asks Iris if something happened. Iris reports that they say the eastern villages are under attack. According to available information, the attack was either by wild animals or magical monsters, although this doesn't change the essence of the matter. Haruki Shindo reports that he has just received an order from Lady Tamamo to investigate and, if an enemy is found, to subdue it. He says the other person can handle it and there's no need to worry. The man explains that the Imperial Guard was created for just such situations. Haruki Shindo says that judging by the words, the enemy will be something serious, since several villages were damaged at once and there will definitely be casualties. He says that he has the swordmaster skill, but at heart he is just a cook, and it is not a fact that in a direct meeting he will be able to activate his skills, just like with the dragon. The woman reports that the damage is likely severe and wants to join Haruki's squad. The woman says she can't right now. Haruki explains that perhaps with his power he can save the creatures' lives. Haruki Shindo says he didn't mention joining the guard and only wants to help prevent any potential damage, explaining that now isn't the best time to formalize his enlistment. Haruki Shindo asks if his sword won't become a burden to the squad. The other man replies that it absolutely won't, and the girl tells him to be careful. The man tells Rinsan that the man asks him why he went with them. Haruki Shindo says he shouldn't have gone with them after all, and warns him not to think about falling off his horse if he suddenly feels like he's going to be killed. The man thanks him for his concern. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't know if horse riding is within the scope of the M skill. Haruki tells him to forgive him because he's always had a bad mouth, and explains that even though he constantly punishes him, the man says there should always be an old man who lectures everyone, and says there's nothing wrong with that. The woman explains that being with his little sister makes him the best brother and asks her to forgive him. The man says not to scold him too harshly. He has good qualities, he's talented in many ways, and warns that if Haruki doesn't give it his all, like he does, he won't be accepted here. Aizel says that Haruki is their emergency soldier today and will not tolerate any mistakes during the mission. Haruki asks if he is an emergency soldier. The man explains that since Haruki is a soldier, he is his subordinate. The man explains that in that case, Haruki is obligated to follow his orders, so the guy tells everyone to listen to him and explains that their goal is to move to another village, and also talks about the need to concentrate all forces on searching for the enemy since all the residents have already been evacuated, and if they miss the enemy, this could lead to many troubles. Haruki Shindo reports that the issued guard uniform supposedly warns of the upcoming battle with its weight on his belt, and that he took his knife, which he used to defeat the dragon, as a talisman, although he is unlikely to use it. Haruki Shindo says that they cannot allow the same thing to happen. He says they will win this time. The girl says that Haruki Shindo explains that since the other man isn't a real soldier, the battle could become dangerous for him, and if that happens, he should leave immediately and not get ahead of himself. The other man says he understands. He says it's terrible. The woman reports that the supplies were destroyed and it will take a long time to rebuild the village, but it's good, there were no casualties. The man silently moves forward. Haruki Shindo informs Iris-san that their opponent is still missing. Iris-san says that maybe if they had hurried a little, they would have made it in time, and Haruki Shindo explains that it looks like they're too late. The man notices scratches on the wall and says that it's impressive. The woman tells Haruki to stop and warns him of danger. Haruki says something in surprise. The man orders the newcomer to step aside. The man protects Haruki, fending off an attack from a huge paw. Haruki Shindo says this can't be true and says he can't believe it. He then explains that it's impossible because he can't be that strong. The man growls. He says they can't afford to make a mistake or they'll die. The man says they must be careful and stay alert. The girl with the ears says she hears something approaching. A metal hand is shown descending to the ground below. Haruki Shindo tells Aizel-san it's just a scratch and asks why he saved him. Aizel-san explains that Haruki is his protege today and the commander is saving him and he's complaining. Haruki Shindo admits his guilt and says he should have been there. A girl runs towards a man with a mask who is screaming in fear. The girl tries to plunge her sword into the creature but is unable to do so, and is surprised. Haruki Shindo reports that the general's sword failed, explaining that he lost his sword when he was attacked. The girl explains that the creature's skin is too hard, and cutting weapons won't penetrate. He looks tensely to the right, then closes his eyes and clenches his teeth. A nearby beast growls and glares menacingly. He raises his knife and stabs the beast. The woman says Haruki shouldn't be cut, and turns to Haruki. The bear growls. Haruki says he wanted to save lives with his skill, but in the end, he feels pathetic. A girl with ears and a tail tells Haruki to dodge. A boy strikes a huge bear. A girl with ears and 3 men standing next to her express surprise and remain silent. Haruki Shindo turns around abruptly, and Aizel tells the general that he was bragging in vain and asks to see what's wrong with him. The general, sitting on the ground, tells the newcomer that he's doing something, and the newcomer asks Aizel how he is. The guy tells her there's nothing shameful about what she did and that it was well done, but she tells him not to say that. The man explains that the wound isn't deep, that the victim managed to dodge at the very last moment, and God knows what could have happened if he had been late. The woman says that Haruki Shindo takes excellent care of his subordinates and praises him. The man is surprised and says this is strange. The man explains that Haruki Shindo was able to kill a bear with 1 blow of a kitchen knife and wonders who he is. The man says that it's about this again, and he reports that he decided to go with them in the name of saving the creatures. The man says he did the same for his ward and that they both fulfilled their duty. The man explains that instead of beating himself up, it's better to save someone else next time. Haruki Shindo remains silent. Haruki Shindo apologizes to both of them and admits he was wrong about Ai. The woman says that, judging by the vigorous arguing, everything is fine. The man says that they'll be getting ready then. The man says that the huge bear surprised him, as he's never seen one like that before, and adds that it's more like a monster. The woman says she's delighted to be able to meet everyone at today's event, but the guests likely want to avoid her long speeches, so she suggests they put the pleasantries aside. The man explains that he represents the pride of awari, a dish that will grace the plates and delight the stomach, and offers. The woman explains that it's bear's paw in its own juice, a dish that was traditional in medieval Chinese cuisine. The man asks if bear's paw is even edible. Several characters react to the dish with surprise. The image does not contain text or speech from the characters. It shows a close-up of a plate of meat and a side dish. The woman asks, what does it look like? Haruki Shindo explains that in his homeland, this dish is called hakchin and is highly prized as a high-class dish. Haruki Shindo explains that this time, by a lucky coincidence, they were able to obtain a huge bear paw. He says it's truly a dish you rarely see. The girl tries the food with a fork. The woman says that. The man says he's never tried anything like this, and the man with the animal head talks about unification. The man reports that the fingertips are especially delicious and melt right in your mouth. He explains that the meat tastes like pork shank, but dozens of times better, and that it's bear meat, without the smell or bitter taste of a predator's meat. Haruki says he understands, and the girl asks him if he will tell her how. Haruki Shindo explains that the paws were first carefully stripped of all their fur using heat and mechanical processing, then boiled with other vegetables. After the meat had softened, all the bones in the paws were removed. He reports that the broth is made up of the meat's juices and other flavors. He says that after removing the fur, the paw was boiled 6 times. After removing the bones, 4 times, and 1 more time for complete cooking. Thus, the paw was boiled for 2 days and 3 nights, 10 and 1 more time, until the smell completely disappeared and the taste of real meat appeared. He explains that it would be possible. Haruki Shindo says he's proud to have treated them to his best cooking and asks them to enjoy and eat as much as they want. The woman explains that she thought Haruki would simply destroy the monster, but he brought it back as an ingredient, calling him a true mad chef. He says that at that moment, unfortunately, but it was worth it. The girl asks if something happened there. Haruki Shindo says no, he just feels like he wants to live as a peaceful cook rather than a warrior. He explains that consommé is a bear's soup, and the name of the dish is pot-au-feu. The woman says the taste is excellent, and that's exactly how she likes it. Haruki Shindo says that while it doesn't taste like pawpaw, it has a distinct flavor of monster meat, and he says he's heard of a hunter's tradition of boiling bear meat and eating it all together. He explains that today the scenario was recreated, the dish's ingredients being the soup obtained after boiling poultry with vegetables, paired with the meat itself. The woman says that again, his delicious, complex experiments. The woman says that thanks to Haruki, she has new connections with the capital. Haruki says the woman's words are a joy to hear. He explains that, as he and Lear discussed, perhaps his true calling is to be a chef. The woman admits that Haruki has proven himself excellent. The woman says that swordsmanship is very important, which is an undeniable truth. Haruki Shindo says that with such power, you can get anything you want. He explains that if he had become a warrior, he probably would never have experienced difficulties being one, and agrees that, he says that he has no confidence when he holds a sword, but with a knife, he is 100% confident in his abilities. The woman says he's clearly already made up his mind. Haruki Shindo says that in that case, he'll only be protecting her from her capricious hunger and thinks she won't mind. He tells her that Tamamoa-san asked him to accompany her to her next event, so he's preparing for the trip. The man is surprised that Haruki is going to the capital. The girl says she'd like to visit there at least once. The man says he's never been there either, and asks. The woman says, "What do you mean it's big?" "Of course it is," she explains, explaining that it's the capital. Haruki Shindo points out that the number of creatures in Owari doesn't even come close to the capital. The girl explains that it's not just the food there, but also that a wide variety of industries are developed and of very high quality. He says that life in this city is quite good, and compared to his homeland, the capital is apparently much larger and more vibrant. He reports that he did his best, noting the taste of the meat and broth. The woman reports that Haruki is being hired not as a security guard, but as a cook, which doesn't usually happen, and this is a great surprise to her. Haruki says that it seems that Mrs. Tamamo really likes him. Haruki asks if she thinks so, and says he's flattered. The woman says she's been to the capital once and will be waiting for souvenirs and stories, but in the meantime, she offers to leave the cooking to Haruki. Haruki thinks about the capital and wonders if he can find rare ingredients there. Haruki takes the steaming cup and says yes. The girl with cat ears addresses. A horse caravan with carts and riders moves along the road. A man with a dog's head leads a donkey with luggage. A girl with ears joyfully tells Haruki Shindo that he should look at something. Haruki Shindo opens the cart's window. The woman says, "This is the capital." Then we see a carriage passing over a bridge, a view of the river, and the city gates. The girl is delighted to see fish swimming in the ditches, and Haruki Shindo says that fish belong in water. The woman says that Rin's wish has reached her, and she has decided to take it. The woman says that it wasn't worth it, but he says that, on the contrary, it certainly was worth it, and explains that she is, after all, knowledgeable in caring for those in her care. The woman with the tail says Iris-san is having a hard time and asks her for confirmation. Iris says it depends on how you look at it. Haruki says that, as Rin-san said, this capital is a little different from Owari. The woman explains that the capital is home to a wide variety of creatures from many countries and corners of the world, and that her Owari has a harbor, so it receives a rich import of almost everything. Haruki Shindo asks about the local aristocracy. The woman explains that, compared to the central cities, her land in Owari is on par with them in terms of imports, and they are powerful. She explains that in the central cities, there are very few individuals as influential as she. The boy explains that he's losing out in influence to the capital's aristocracy, Risport. The girl explains that the imperial court remains the capital's main power, despite the arrogance of others. The man speaks clearly. The man says that the capital's aristocrats exist simply to maintain order in the area around the capital, and even if they wanted to buy some land in the capital to gain an advantage, they would not succeed since the land is entirely imperial. Haruki Shindo says he had no idea. He explains that to get to where they are now, they had to stop at every post station, change horses, and then immediately set off, and that it means they still have to travel the same distance to reach their destination. The woman reports that in the kingdom of Osurdia, located on the other side of the sea, a railway is being built to connect the surrounding cities with the capital. She explains that this will allow all creatures to move freely and without hindrance. The woman says the country on the other side of the sea is an enviable thing, and if she had the same, her Owari would be a minor curiosity. She explains that despite Wanakuni's size, its imports are severely limited. The man explains that once you cross the sea, a completely different world opens up. Haru. The woman says she'll be watching and warns that the scent of rare ingredients could carry Haruki Shindo to another country, and explains that without this quality, taking him to the central cities would be pointless. Haruki Shindo says there's no need to read him like an open book. He asks if it's a person or something. The guy asks what she's like. The girl offers to listen. She explains that she's a leading aristocrat, that the current aristocrats are no match for her, and that she will destroy anyone. She explains that she has the right to develop the country's precious deposits and 80% of all deposits, which is enough to understand who she is. Haruki Shindo says he's right. The woman explains that Mari originally came from an industrial family. The man explains that they worked with the main family to decide on the right to mine the gem deposits, and the decisions weren't always peaceful. He says that since she resolved the issue, she should have a good reputation. The woman explains that he is a very good-natured boy. He asks, what? The man explains that as a result, her family began to deteriorate, and because of the stupid head of the family, it almost went bankrupt. Haruki Shindo says whoever said that resolving the issue meant everyone was happy in the end. The man says he doesn't know the details, but he heard that of all the families in the industry, they weren't the strongest. The woman says she doesn't know a single woman who had to suffer and work as much. The guy announces that they'll be having dinner with this jewel queen, and the woman says it's working out that way. The text explains that she has influence in the imperial court, so it wouldn't hurt to make a good impression. Haruki Shindo announces that they have a special souvenir and asks if they brought any imported exotic items. He explains that if you consider yourself an imported exotic item, then yes. The man says. The girl asks if she needs to cook anything, and the man says that's enough. He says he was scared and that they calmed him down. The woman points out the animals and says that there's even someone riding on top of one of them. The woman says she's relying on Haruki in any case. Haruki and the woman both say it's Mari-san's estate. The woman says the building is breathtaking just looking at it, and the guy replies that it is. The text explains that it's the first Western-style building the guy has seen since arriving in this world. Haruki Shindo asks if she's a person of foreign style, and says that if that were all, she also likes foreign food. The man explains that's why he hired Haruki, since it wasn't easy to negotiate with her, and asks her to rely on him. The man tells Ari that he says Iris-san isn't coming. The woman explains that Mari is quite unsociable, so it took some time to arrange for Haruki to be taken inside. The man explains that it's not the security at the estate itself that's the problem, but the fact that no one except the mistress stays in the mansion at night. The girl wishes Haruki luck at work and waves her hands. Haruki says that in such a big building, there's still one. The woman explains that he took this job for a reason. Haruki agrees that she's probably right, and his motivation increases. Haruki Shindo reports that ringing the bell means the door is open. He says that so many years and winters have passed, Tamamo-chan. The woman says that she has been waiting for this moment. The elf explains that this necklace is a symbol of royal power, and that it belonged to her ancestors and was passed down from generation to generation. A woman talks about the wonderful food he cooks, and Haruki Shindo says that it's great because he loves delicious food. The woman asks to go through, explaining that a nice girl hasn't come to see her for a long time. The woman says she can't accept the honor because she's just a girl from the outskirts of the country. The man says he thinks he and Tamamo-chan could become friends, adding that he knows he. The woman says that Haruki Shindo often gives her nice things, but that's not why he liked her. Haruki Shindo explains that modesty is not an option. The woman explains that in their world, it's established that men are the most important and powerful, but she doesn't think so and supports him. The woman says that Tamamo-chan excels at using the carrot and stick, which is why she's beautiful and only remembers trade. The man says that at the same time, one shouldn't intimidate people by flaunting one's image with a whip. The woman explains that this is exactly what Tamamo-chan can do, and it's another amazing thing about her. She says she'll become her close friend and calls Tamamo-chan beautiful. The guy explains that this is what aristocrats are like. The girl says she wants Tamamo-chan to listen to her ego a little. The woman says this union will be of great value and asks what the other woman desires. Another woman says it's simple. She loves delicious food, but she loves it even more when it's beautifully prepared. The man explains that while delicious food may be enough for men, this is the age of graceful and beautiful food. A woman asks Haruki Shindo to do something that would be suitable for someone like her. Haruki Shindo says it will be done. He reports that the kitchen has an electric and a regular oven, as well as a deep fryer, and explains that the ingredients are few and not carefully selected. Haruki Shindo says that fish with vegetables seems to be health-conscious, and explains that it is the freshest fish that also has a harbor. The woman explains who's cooking if there's not even a chef here by evening, and that she doesn't look like she cooks herself, but anything can happen. He says Marie is quite unsociable, so it took some time to arrange to let you in. Haruki Shindo says that this is the age of graceful and beautiful food, and then repeats that food should be graceful and beautiful. He explains that this fish is called ruby and that it will be cut first. Haruki Shindo begins cutting the fish. He says the crimson color now explains why she's called ruby. Haruki Shindo says that's great and will do it then. Then he carefully separates the skin of the fish and tests it with his finger. He says that we need beautiful and graceful food, and he promises that there will be exactly that kind of food. The woman says she's laughing. The elf says she's surprised. The woman describes the ruby red fish, roasted maiquit, with vegetables in a mosaic pattern, all accompanied by a mini salad. She explains that she's never seen such an elegant terrine before and remarks on how beautiful it is. Then the woman tries the dish. The woman says the dish is delicious and a wonderful combination of vegetables and fish, and then asks Haruki Shindo how he prepared it. Haruki Shindo thanks her for the compliment and explains that the ruby fish was first marinated and then placed in a special container. He explains that the plate is decorated with sauce as beautifully as if a canvas were decorated with a masterpiece, and informs that the sauce consists of chopped boiled dill along with olive oil and mustard. The woman explains that high-quality olive oil is rich in vitamins and is considered a healthy oil, and also reveals that she was the one who purchased all these high-quality ingredients. The woman says it was amazing not only for its taste but also for its beauty, which she saw for the first time. Haruki Shindo says it was her first time trying it. He says he feels like he's missing something very important. The woman says that, unfortunately, this isn't the dish that suits her. Haruki Shindo says he was mistaken and realizes he missed something important because of that. He says that he doesn't mind being scratched behind the ear. The girl reports that Iris-san simply doesn't sneeze. Haruki Shindo comments on the growing tension in the carriage. The girl says, and the man asks if something's wrong and turns to Rin-san, asking if it's her. The girl replies that she should be the one asking and asks why the light in the kitchen is still on. Haruki Shindo apologizes and explains that he started cleaning and couldn't stop. The girl laughs and says that Haruki Shindo should be the one apologizing since she was sitting there waiting. Haruki Shindo confirms and suggests they try something good. The girl enthusiastically agrees. He says the bread is old. The girl asks if all the bread is really old. He confirms it. The girl asks if there's any old bread there by any chance. He explains that if you cook, you should do it so that the bread stays and not the other way around without getting it out. Haruki Shindo says it's bread pudding. He crumbled some old bread into a mixture of egg, honey, and milk, mixed it all together, and baked it. Haruki Shindo says he thinks it turned out well, so he'd like someone to judge it. The girl understands. The girl says the smell is very pleasant and wishes herself a pleasant meal. She explains that the dish is sweet, tender, and very tasty. He announces that starting tomorrow, he plans to serve this dish to all the maids on every shift. The girl is surprised and asks if they all get it. The guy says the maids always make their job easier with their efforts, and he'd like to thank them for that. He suggests starting with the girl's portion. The girl replies that she's sure everyone will be very happy. The guy asks to keep it a secret and is surprised that it's another portion. The girl takes the gift. The girl says she feels like Haruki Shindo wants to spoil her. Haruki Shindo asks what's wrong. The girl says he wants to spoil her, and Haruki Shindo says she's noticed. He offers half of his portion. The girl with cat ears is surprised and asks if she can have another half. He says that of course she can. The woman says that cinnamon and honey will make the pudding even more delicious. She shares a recipe for a pudding that uses bread, milk, eggs, and sugar. The soaked bread is cut into pieces or slices. The eggs are beaten and mixed with milk and sugar. Then the bread is placed on a baking sheet and the guy says he's on his way. The girl thanks him for something. The girl explains it was her fault last time. The guy says he heard she was injured saving Haruki Shindo. The girl thanks him and says she's no longer angry about that incident. The man says he later became a burden to everyone because of the wound and agrees. The girl says that anger and fear are two completely different things, that she's still a little afraid, which is why she still doesn't like him and orders him to stop being so harsh with Haruki-san's food. The man explains that he still doesn't like him. The girl says goodbye. The man starts to speak, but pauses. Haruki Shindo expresses his gratitude for picking up the second volume, explains that this volume depicts many animals, including edible ones, and explains that he intends to continue to depict the world of Tenna-sensei and Nakano-sensei's characters with respect and pleasure. The guy announces that the whole gang is here. The woman says the letter A, and the man with the mustache and the woman with the animal ears say, wow. The guy suggests they think about it. The man says they still have some tamo-san meat left, so he's thinking of making some beef stew. The woman asks the chef what they're having for dinner, and the man calls out to Aizel, asking where she's going. The man says, beef stew, and asks for a more fluid movement. The man at the table repeats beef stew. The man sitting on the bench says beef stew and praises the man for his work. The girl reports that an order has been received to urgently subdue the monster. The woman says the food isn't right for her. Haruki Shindo says it's his fault and he screwed up because of it. He explains that the order was something just right for her and wonders why she never asked for something beautiful and elegant. The woman says she thinks the mistake was quite serious. The girl says she apologizes for being so rude, but does even Haruki know? Haruki Shindo asks for another chance. The woman reacts with surprise, then explains that she is not giving up and warns that if they fail again, she will not be invited again. The woman says that if she retreats now, it will be a shame for Owari, and adds that she vouches for him. The elf says that since Tamamo-chan is asking for another chance, she will give it to her, but she can only use what is left in the kitchen and hopes that this time Tamamo-chan will be able to understand what the dish that is suitable for her is. Haruki Shindo says that he can't understand why he cares so much about this girl, and explains that he is not used to such feelings. He reports that at the moment when he felt that he had missed something, he had to stop and think again. Haruki Shindo reports that because of this, he only has a few vegetables left, and only the worst parts of them. He says that he can handle it. Haruki Shindo tells him to leave and thinks this dish suits Mari-san. The woman says she's a beautiful woman and asks if this is the only thing she has. He says he doesn't know a single woman who has had to suffer and work as much as Marie, and calls her the Queen of Jewels. A luxurious estate and a rare art collection, a kitchen unlike any other, and food for only one. Haruki Shindo says that if he fails, it will be the end. He announces that the menu has been decided and raises his hand. Haruki Shindo says that now he needs to do something that will touch her deeply. The elf reports that it's a stir-fry of fresh vegetables and a broth with dried vegetables, cooked over low heat with an emphasis on the Maillard reaction. The elf looks at the dish. The right panel shows a fork picking up food from a plate. The left panel shows a girl eating with her eyes closed. Haruki Shindo says he can't afford to be weak because he has responsibilities. The girl says she understands this and asks him not to forget about himself. The woman says it's clear and delicious. She explains that it's the first time she's tried a dish with such a pronounced vegetable flavor, calling it simple yet beautiful. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't understand how they could make something like that from what was left. The woman says that everything is fine and asks not to worry. The girl is silent, and he says an ellipsis. The elf explains that the ingredients were vegetable scraps, root vegetable peels, mushroom stems, and green leaf stalks, which were dried in a low-heat oven and baked to initiate the Maillard reaction. The girl exclaims in shock that it's all waste. A woman asks about the Maillard reaction. Haruki Shindo explains that this reaction is what gives a dish its aroma. He explains that when meat is fried, after a certain amount of time it begins to brown, which is a sign that the reaction is starting, producing the delicious aroma of fried meat. Haru. The woman explains that in their case, she dried vegetables containing glutamate and then extracted it to enrich the broth with its vegetable flavor. She reports that she should have thrown the waste away, but decided to add it to the broth, which was then strained and boiled again. After the entire process, all the resulting parts, namely the broth and vegetables, were combined into one dish. The girl eats with a fork. Haruki Shindo says vegetable scraps were transformed into such a beautiful and delicious dish. The woman says he thinks this is the dish that suits her. The woman tastes the food and declares it truly delicious. The woman can't help but recall the past, when she lived and gradually collected fragments of precious stones. Haruki Shindo recalls the moment he reached the summit and says that when the broken, cloudy, and uncut stones were put together piece by piece, they came together in his hand. The woman says that the moment when she felt a slight tremor of victory in her chest was like the time when she was collecting herself piece by piece to get the crystal of her true self. The woman says she's become accustomed to the views from the summit, and that this beautifully assembled dish represents her early years. Haruki Shindo confirms that it's exactly the dish she imagined. He says to the chef, San. The girl hands Haruki the pendant and says here. He says excitedly, oh. The guy says he can't accept something so expensive. The woman explains it. The woman tells the guy to take it. Haruki Shindo says it's like this. The woman explains that when a woman gives, the man is obligated to accept. The elf thanks him and says she'll take good care of the gift, but the man explains that he can't, because it wouldn't be suitable for her. The elf explains that he can sell it, keep it on him, or give it to his loved one, and offers to do whatever he wants with the gift, asking for. Haruki Shindo says it's good. The elf thanks them both and says that thanks to them, she was able to remember something, then says goodbye and wishes them goodbye, friends. He explains that Mari-san is once again locked in her great abode of solitude and wonders if she will remember anything else in her company. The woman says that she would like to say that everything is over, but starting tomorrow they have a busy schedule again, and Haruki Shindo will have to work a little more. He says to trust him. He prepares a dish for a man with horns who holds a fork and knife. A woman with a hair ornament tastes the prepared dish. Haruki Shindo announces that it's a fish dish with sauce, prepared according to a special recipe. The girl in the maid costume says she brought fresh vegetables. Haruki Shindo explains that she's currently preparing a meat dish with a side dish. The woman says that even delicious dinner parties make her so tired. He asks if she's okay. The woman says he worked hard too, and how nice it was that she took him on. Haruki Shindo says her words of praise are a real reward for him. The woman asks if he gets tired of cooking, to which he explains that he already works in the castle every day. He reports that with Marison it was more difficult, but with the others it was easier, calling it a bitter memory. The woman reports that everyone simply asked for a tasty dish and was genuinely happy when they received it. She explains that the newcomers are gourmets and asks if Haruki Shindo is used to this. Haruki Shindo says he has no plans today, thinking of taking a little rest, and offers the woman one too. He says it's about rest. The girl says he and Mrs. Tamamo have worked very hard, and if they continue like this, they might even become ill. The girl explains that she doesn't work like that and cleans even the living room every day. The girl says that the sun is shining outside and suggests going for a walk, but Haruki Shindo silently looks away and moves away. He says it's already lunchtime and suggests they go see what the capital's food is like. The girl agrees and says that over time they can do whatever they want, adding that every word, there's food. The woman calls out to Eri, saying she's also free and can do something. Eri replies that she doesn't need rest and asks to listen to her. The woman suddenly touches Eri's face, who is surprised and asks if this is really about her. Tamamo says she's going to sleep, and Haruki says it's agreed, and that's it. The man asks Tamamo what she'll do. Haruki Shindo is silent. The man is silent. The girl says to leave the cleaning to her. He says that, if you think about it, this is the first time they've ever walked alone. The man replies, The woman says that Haruki Shindo always sits in his kitchen and doesn't come out, and Haruki Shindo explains that it's his job to cook all the time, and even with the help of Sariya-san and the others, they barely have time. The woman says that she knows about his desire to become a cook, and, watching his actions, is invariably surprised by his skills, and he responds with a question, expressing surprise, and says that even now he is thinking about how to drag her into the guards. Haruki Shindo says that the power that Ira-san recognized in him is not his at all. But even if it is something he received, it can be used for the benefit of beings, and at the same time says that the skill of the interlocutor does not give him peace. The woman looks forward silently, and he says that perhaps he is too selfish. The woman tells him not to worry and to put on a relaxed face, explaining that if he decides to do anything, he will be welcomed with open arms. The man asks for forgiveness. The guy asks if this is fair, and Haruki Shindo says that since they were given a rest, he treats them and offers to eat their fill of delicious food. The guy says the dish is good and, thanks to the saltiness, it's delicious even without the sauce. The girl with the ears says it's delicious. The text says the dish is similar to soy milk nabe, but it has slightly different spices and is generally fresh. The milky flavor and spiciness help. Haruki Shindo says the vegetables are very fresh and the spices taste interesting and asks if he can find the ingredients for it. The girl replies that she doesn't know. She understands that it's delicious, but for her, food exists simply for the sake of satisfaction. She thinks that if Haruki told him to fill his stomach, he would. The man reports that dairy production is well developed here, and cattle breeding is also good, so there is plenty of milk and meat, but they are a little short of fish. Haruki Shindo says it's strange that when he cooked fish dishes for aristocrats, the ingredients were always there, and perhaps this is directly related to the difference in social status. The man reports that the aristocrats are surprised and express interest. He says that while sitting together and eating, it feels like the other man is trying to lure him into cooking, and asks if he likes the food that much. He explains that for him, it's a compliment. The other man asks why he wants Haruki S so much. Haruki says that, if she thinks about it, she'll be safer in the guards without him. No one will question Iris-san's authority. The girl explains that she could say this for the sake of peaceful lives, and it would sound good, but it's more her selfishness that's at play here. Haruki asks, Haruki Shindo asks if he knows about swordmasters. The girl with the ears asks what he just said. Haruki Shindo calms down and says it seems his skill has been discovered. The girl explains that he's a swordmaster and asks if he really hasn't heard of it. The woman explains that a swordmaster is someone who is extremely skilled with a sword, and the man replies that yes, that's exactly it. The woman says she thought the man was an amateur at everything except cooking. The woman explains that swordmaster is a title given to the very best of the best, and they may not appear for decades. Haruki Shindo says that perhaps even he can reach this pinnacle, and he thinks so. The woman explains that when she heard about Haruki's dragon slaying, the woman says she didn't believe it before their duel, and also notes that the boy also cut down the bear with one blow. The woman reports that it all turned out to be true in the end. He explains that the title of strongest warrior refers to those who possess great strength in wielding a sword. The boy says he's sure there are beings more suited to the title than he is. The girl says she always wanted to be just an ordinary cook. Haruki Shindo says that if he's striving for anything, it's to master advanced knife skills. He's confident that bladed weapons in the kitchen will bring him more happiness than on the battlefield. The woman replies that's understandable and expresses surprise. The girl asks what kind of person becomes a master and tells him she once saw a guy who would be hard to describe in just one word. The man explains that at first glance, he's a peaceful elf, handsome and skinny and good-natured. The girl says that although she hasn't seen him in action many times, she can definitely say that she has never met a stronger swordsman and says that he is strong. Haruki Shindo says that if the man says that, he must be really strong. The girl replies that, relatively speaking, yes. The woman says that, compared to him, Haruki hears someone speaking to him, and the woman tells him there's a place she'd like to take him to. Haruki apologizes, explaining that it's quite crowded. The woman says it's the central square, and they should go there. Haruki Shindo asks what it is. Haruki Shindo explains that it's a holy sword, and the man is surprised and repeats the word, sword. He says that the thrusting of the sword created the cracks that frame the lands of this capital, and that is how it was created. The man reports that, at least that's what they say. Haruki Shindo says it's just a tourist attraction now, and the woman explains it has an unusual history. He asks what will happen if it is taken out. The man laughs and says that as if anyone could. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't know the sword's origins, or perhaps it was deliberately made to remain undrawn. He explains that many swordsmen have tried to draw it, but since the time of the first hero, no one has succeeded. He asks the girl if she's ever tried to pull it out. The girl says she's only tried 17 times. Haruki Shindo says it's a lot. The girl says it's just her ritual when she comes to the capital and tells him to shut up. The girl says she's heard that some swordmasters try to remove it every day. He says there's no stipulation that you can't try multiple times. The girl asks him to try this time, and he says that's enough about him. The guy with the sword says, is it him? The man in the vest and the man in the cloak are happy. Haruki Shindo says no, and the girl with ears and a tail asks what if he really gets kicked out. The woman says he started talking, and asks her to pay attention. He says he doesn't deny wanting to see it too. The guy explains that it's Tamamo-san's order, so he should try. Haruki Shindo says that on one hand he wants to see it, but on the other hand, he doesn't. The girl says that on the other hand, she doesn't. The woman says she wants to be sure once and for all, and asks if he'll try. He says he doesn't even know which feeling is stronger. Haruki Shindo sighs and says he'll only agree this once. He explains that the sword looks as if it was just forged, adding that it doesn't look like it's been there since the capital was built. The boy explains that he understands that this is an unusual sword and says that it is a holy sword. The girl says that it will soon be the 18th time. Recently, Haruki Shindo has begun to understand how to use the skill and can now consciously choose not to use it when holding the blade. Haruki Shindo says that if he doesn't use the skill, he won't be able to draw it. The guy says that he is just an ordinary person, and it is unlikely that he will succeed in anything. The girl says that as she thought, he is not. Haruki Shindo reports that, look, he reports that the sword has been drawn. He says, you. The man and other characters at the bottom of the stage react to this event. The guy says he doesn't know what to do and accuses the girl of being the one who told him to pull it out, and the girl asks him to remain calm. The guy explains he can't believe he used the skill. The man demands he just give it back. The man says he finally got it in Haruki. The man is surprised. Haruki Shindo says, it's you. The girl says the same. Elf says it's you too. Elf tells the guy to stop and not move any further. The boy exclaims in amazement as the large fragments break into smaller pieces. Haruki says, ah. The girl with the sword is silent. The man with the cloak slowly approaches. The man shouts that he's a bastard and asks if Haruki knows what he's done. Haruki silently looks forward, sweating. The girl says that the shell has a milky consistency, and inside there is a boiled yolk. Haruki Shindo says everything is fine and asks if the other man knows what he did. The man explains that he is not fine. Haruki Shindo asks who he is. He says he's here and asks if they know each other. He then explains that he doesn't know what to do with the sword, which he believes is either in complete disarray or broken into pieces. Haruki Shindo says it might not work out well and asks if the swordmaster skill doesn't include gluing abilities. He says it looks like even the skill won't help and explains that it's not working and that's the end. The girl asks not to call her general in. The elf says he'll ask again if he understands what he did. He asks what he did. The girl says he broke the holy sword. He explains it's the same master and asks what. Haruki Shindo reports that, at first glance, it's a peaceful elf, and that he's heard that some sword masters try to remove it every day. Haruki Shindo replies that isn't he the one who does that every day and grabs the sword. He says he can't believe the sword broke. He expresses surprise and bewilderment. The man asks what the other is doing out of the blue. The man is silent. The man tells the other to follow him. The man calls the bird to him. A woman informs Lady Kaguya of an emergency involving the holy sword and the man who drew it. Lady Kaguya says she hasn't had this honor in a long time and suggests they meet the man quickly. The man asks about the holy sword. Haruki Shindo says he's truly sorry for what he did. The girl says, raising her head and saying, "Oh, what's wrong?" He says that they are. The man says that he is glad to welcome them. He says that they have come to the imperial palace. The woman says that she heard that the shrouded holy sword was taken out. Elf says it's amazing, and even Rei couldn't do it. Haruki Shindo says this with surprise. The girl says that the woman she's talking to is definitely from the 900th Guard, and her name is Iris. Iris gives her name. The girl explains that she should be in the capital right now, and remembers something from a letter she recently received. He says they'll drop the pleasantries and ask. The girl says he's clearly not okay, so what? The boy says he's very sorry and addresses the girl as Lady Kaguya. Rei Sakura explains that this incident might not have happened if he had been able to draw his sword sooner and admits his guilt for such negligence. The girl says there's nothing to be done. Haruki hasn't been able to do it every single day. Haruki tells Rei to raise her head. The woman reports that the blade's fragments are coming together. There's no mistaking it. It's a genuine holy sword. The woman says it's amazing. The girl asks what his name is. Haruki Shindo says that his name is Shindo Haruki. The woman says the name Shindo Haruki is beautiful. She explains that she believes it's known as the name of a great warrior. He reveals that he's actually just a cook and denies it. The man asks if the cook told Haruki Shindo. Haruki Shindo says that when the man stops setting him up. The woman says that the cook was able to remove the holy sword and confirms this. He explains what the cook means. The woman explains this. The woman says that anything can happen, and a holy sword could have chosen any being to wield it. Haruki Shindo listens silently. The elf says that he perfectly parried his sword strike and that no chef can be that good in this area. He calls Haruki a cheater and asks if the chef could take his strike the way Haruki did. The elf explains that he's just a cook and somewhat talented. Haruki Shindo says something in response. The woman explains that if their cook was chosen as the sword's master, perhaps there's some meaning behind the sword's breakage. The woman explains that this is the scabbard of the holy sword, destined to be inherited by the sword's new owner and entrusted to the first hero for safekeeping for today. He says that one outer part emits such a light, and the scabbard is the pinnacle of majesty. The woman reports that, nevertheless, the girl says he must prove that he is the one who has the right to own the relic and promises to hand it over to him with honor. Haruki Shindo remains silent. He says he needs to show evidence. He says the only thing he can show is his skill. Haruki Shindo thinks that if he says he's not interested, they probably won't believe him. He explains that he feels unsuited to the sword and that perhaps, having received it, he'll have no choice but to embrace the life of a warrior. Haruki says he doesn't want to. The girl says she's incredibly grateful but asks him to wait, turning to Haruki. Haruki Shindo says it's Tamamo-san. Tamamo-san turns to the princess and informs her that Pari's words are meant to show who has the right to possess the relic, and asks if she will keep them. The woman says it's a family contract with the hero, the man confirms it, and the girl calls the situation very interesting. The girl explains that recognizing a person as worthy is her destiny and mission in life, and if her mission is fulfilled, the result will illuminate the lands with the fire of holy protection. The woman says she has the right to judge. The woman asks if Haruki Shindo will listen to her request. Haruki Shindo reacts with surprise and agrees, saying it's as he wishes. Haruki Shindo says he'll soon be driven mad. The woman accepts the bet and notes that Haruki looks more like a cook than a warrior. She announces that Haruki's sheath's worthiness will be proven today. Haruki smiles, and the two men and the girl react with surprise. The woman says it's good that she's the one being treated today. Haruki Shindo says it's excellent and asks her to leave it to him. The woman smiles. He says that if they win, his chef will receive a sword with a sheath in the shape of his kitchen appliance. The guy asks Haruka Shindo if she should have agreed. Haruka Shindo says that everything is fine, Rei, and explains that the only thing the hero gave them was the scabbard, and the sword originally did not belong to anyone. The woman says she knows how much Rei desired the holy sword, and as she knows this better than anyone as a childhood friend. She explains that the Holy Sword has remained an elusive goal for many great masters, including Rei, throughout history, and notes that this is interesting. Haruki Shindo says he can't believe he'll be given the Holy Sword as a kitchen tool, explaining that holding it brings a strange feeling of nostalgia. He says he's sure if the sword were the shape and size of a kitchen knife, he'd be able to demonstrate even greater mastery of the weapon. He says that an ordinary chef couldn't withstand such a blow. He explains that if a dish is prepared solely by skill, can it then be considered worthy of a sword and scabbard? Haruki Shindo says that it's because he was a chef that he suddenly split into pieces. The man says there's a way to test it. He says he can gain recognition as a cook, not a warrior, and that it depends on the next plate of food. He says that this time it will be for real. The girl speaks to Rin-san and thanks him. Haruki Shindo answers her. The girl says that the reason she was able to reach the point she's at now is because of Rin-san. Haruki places her hand on the edge of the table. The guy announces that he has started cooking. The woman reports that there seems to be nothing distinctive. Haruki Shindo is twirling an object in his hands. A girl and a guy ask if Haruki has always been like this. The man tells Haruki to try harder. The girl asks if he's sure about this. Haruki Shindo places his hand on the table. He says it's fried vegetables and asks to try it, wishing her a pleasant meal. He explains that at first glance the dish does indeed give the impression of something high class, but there's no real flavor to it. It's just ordinary fried vegetables. Haruki asks. The woman tastes the food and says it's delicious. The man, surprised, says he can't believe it. The woman says the consistency, the exquisite taste, and the perfect balance of spices are far superior to anything she has ever tasted and wonders why. Haruki Shindo says that's exactly what was planned. The girl expresses bewilderment. The one who, in pursuit of this sword, trained day and night through all difficulties, reports that this is the one who is worthy of this sword. The guy says that, even so Haruki Shindo says he can't understand why he feels this way and explains that it doesn't feel like normal fatigue. He tells Rei-san that he wants to know why he is so eager to master the sword, and Rei-san addresses him by name. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't understand the meaning of the word why. The guy reports that he admired. The elf explains that he admired the masters of days gone by, so he took up the sword and decided to become a warrior who would have enough strength to draw the sword. Haruki Shindo says that he does not understand why the interlocutor is so abstaining from such an opportunity, and says that he would never refuse and would not stop until he received the sword. He says he doesn't understand why his interlocutor, with his abilities, prefers cooking to swordsmanship. Haruki Shindo says the reason is exactly the same, and thanks Rei-san. Rei-san expresses gratitude in return. He explains that knives must be sharp to cut effortlessly. Haruki Shindo takes a cone-shaped object from a box. He says that when he was a child, the man reports that he stood by the window and looked out. Haruki Shindo says his parents took him to a certain restaurant, and it was his place of admiration. He admired how delicious food can be in this world. Then he takes a knife. The girl says that he wrapped the holy sword in cloth to use it, and Haruki Shindo says that he admired people who could cook something so delicious. He reports that after the hike, he was constantly striving and wanting to do the same, studying on his own, then seeking knowledge abroad at school and learning the intricacies in practice. He explains that he gave himself entirely to achieve the mastery he has. Haruki Shindo says he won't give up his dream just because of his pride in front of this holy sword. He says he knows perfectly well that this sword is used differently, and he understands that there are beings worthy of this holy sword far more than he is. He explains that he is one with this skill and that this cannot be taken away from him. The girl says that if she were the one who pulled it out, Haruki Shindo says he's willing to trample his pride and honor into the dirt to achieve his dream. The man and woman express surprise. Haruki Shindo grabs a dagger. He says that any knowledge is a gift from the ancestors, and if it comes down to it, he adds everything he has to the dish through the holy sword. Haruki Shindo says he will ensure that the cutting, roasting, and seasoning are at the highest level. He says that everything must be done perfectly, right down to the cells. Haruki Shindo says that he will be able to see because he has the skill, and he will be able to implement because he has the holy sword, and he will also use whatever it takes to achieve the ideal. He says that he will use all the knowledge, all the practice, and all the skills he has to make this dish perfect. Haruki Shindo says he'll do something no one else can do. A man and a woman report it's amazing. The girl says that the book contains a spell that can bring the dead back to life, and explains that a special stone must be used to activate it. The woman says it's delicious. Haruki Shindo explains that if he said so, his conscience would torment him for the rest of his life for giving such a low rating, and that no one would be able to describe the taste, so far beyond the taste of ordinary food. The woman says she'd like to see him continue as a chef and see where his path will lead him. The man listens, and three women look at them. Haruki Shindo asks what the dish is called. The girl explains that it's the skill that started her life here, and the first dish she ever made with her skill. It's said to be just ordinary fried vegetables. It's said that 20 days passed at Suzurao Castle in Owari. A man makes a sound, nya-ya-ya. A girl says Haruki Shindo's food is delicious. Haruki asks how his signature dish tastes. The girl explains that it's hard to imagine it's just stir-fried vegetables, and that the flavor is a bit difficult to describe, but it's mind-blowing. The girl asks what signature means. He explains that when a chef achieves the level of mastery he desires, the dish acquires that part of the chef's love that he has put into it over time. The girl says there's no better cook in the world than Haruki-san. Haruki explains that this is his best attempt, but he still has a lot to learn. The girl says she's recently learned to cook well. She's a bit unsure why exactly, but she's glad she was able to help. The girl clarifies that it's thanks to her boyfriend. The boyfriend says the girl has been a great help. The girl says that thanks to him, she was able to realize her dreams and wants to go to his homeland. Haruki Shindo explains that they've been to many places these days and suggests, for example, working at the castle or going to the capital, even though he's never been anywhere but Owari. The girl confirms this. The girl says that since this is his native land, there must be many other delicious dishes there. He says this with surprise. Haruki Shindo says there are a lot of them there, and there is no doubt. The girl says it's true and asks him to do it next time. He smiles. Haruki Shindo suggests thinking about ramen or champong, a soup with mixed stir-fry vegetables. The girl asks if it's ramen or champong. Haruki Shindo says not to worry, they'll definitely like them, and the girl says she'll look forward to it. The woman asks if he wants to say he attacked the cook, and the man says he was going to stop at the last minute. The woman says it's been a while since she's had anything like this. The man asks if she said anything, and Haruki Shindo asks him to ignore her. The woman explains that it's a fiete with mung bean filling and a sauce with melted Roquefort cheese and a mint flavor. The man asks. The woman announces that there's a bivalve moose nearby, explaining that it all makes for a pleasant and exotic display on the plate to whet the appetite. The man eats. Haruki Shindo says that a dish from an experienced chef will never offend, and reminds them that they brought back more than just cheese from the capital. Lady Kaguya asks what happened to the holy sword. Haruki Shindo explains that Lady Kaguya entrusted him with the holy sword scabbard without any problem. He says it's unpleasant to say, but the consequences of using the sword and the skill simultaneously were, to put it mildly, unpleasant. The girl explains that she's not very good at using it yet and asks how. Haruki reports that after he made fried vegetables, he collapsed as soon as he entered his room. The girl shouts at Haruki, getting his attention. Haruki Shindo reports that using the holy sword as a knife is difficult for now, because if he forces himself to do so, his body won't be able to withstand it for long. The woman explains that only fragments remain of the holy sword, and says that's how it is. The woman says it would be great if the holy sword was shaped like a kitchen knife, and explains that it's a knife, you say. He says he'll think of something, and then asks if that's true. The woman says not to be surprised, and explains that Haruka's work is in their favor. Haruki Shindo says that the opportunity to make those fried vegetables was only thanks to Rin-san, and he wanted to give it to her as a thank you. He says he hopes the girl likes it. The girl screams what it is and asks him to stop, making a frightened sound. Haruki Shindo announces that he received a gem from Mari-san as a thank you. Mari-san reacts with surprise. The girl asks if the guy got it as a gift, and the guy says it's a very generous gift and hits the nail on the head. The girl explains that since the name is Marie, it must be a girl, and the guy replies, yes, so what? The girl drawls out the ha-ah. The girl says it's wrong to give a gift from a girl to another girl and forbids it. Haruki Shindo asks for forgiveness. The girl says she can't believe he's bad at everything except cooking, and that he probably would have done a lot of weird things if she weren't there. He explains that Marie-san told him to use the item however he wants, and wonders what to do with it now. The woman says she's learned of an interesting man who can definitely reforge the holy sword. Haruki Shindo says it's indeed possible. The man asks if he's a blacksmith. The woman says the man will have to investigate the situation himself and that she will cover the costs, and if he asks for money, she will warn him that she is paying. The man explains that he is unsure, perhaps he doesn't need the money. The woman explains that, from what she has heard, he has a very difficult personality. The woman tells him to be careful on the road. Haruki Shindo reports that they seem to have arrived, and there's a sign next to it that this is the land of bison, fiat. Haruki reports that it's quite lively here. This town is famous for the blacksmith who forged the holy sword for the last hero, and there were also rumors that a descendant of that blacksmith lives here. The man explains that all the weapons from the former wars were made here, and now they make other gold items here, which makes the town. The guy says his name was Liu A, and he's a descendant of the blacksmith who forged the holy sword. Haruki Shindo tells him if everything will go well. He says that Lady Tamamo has already spoken, so it doesn't matter whether Liu A is a descendant of a blacksmith or not, and that all that remains is to believe that he will be able to forge a knife from your shard. Haruki says he hopes they'll have luck. The woman coughs and says, "By the way, Haruki." Haruki Shindo asks if he will be allowed to hold the holy sword, and the girl replies that of course. He says that there are quite a lot of different blacksmiths here, and it will be difficult to search. Haruki asks Iris-san what happened to her, and Iris-san replies in surprise. Haruki says he'll confiscate everything because it looks just like a child's. The girl says no. Haruki explains that it means they don't know anything except the name, and it looks like they'll have to spend time gathering information. Haruki Shindo says that it looks like that and that they will also do the shopping that Tamamo-san asked them to do, and the woman invites them to go shopping. The guy with the ears announces that swords are available for rent, and the man explains that they just opened and invites you in. The guy with the ears suddenly swings his sword, cutting through the air. A woman greets Haruki Shindo and says he has an excellent sword that can pierce even a cobblestone when thrust, and that's awesome. The woman asks Haruki if his arm has been trained and says she thinks this sword would suit him perfectly. Haruki Shin. The woman says they actually wanted to know about a rumor. The girl asks if it's a rumor. The woman confirms and explains that it's about a descendant of a legendary blacksmith. The woman says she doesn't know, and if they don't take it, then they should leave. Haruki Shindo and the girl with ears listen. The guy says this is the third store he's been to, and in each one they've turned him away when he starts talking. The girl says something's wrong. He says this is the third store. The woman says that if this continues, they won't be able to find anything and asks what they should do. Haruki Shindo says he'll leave it to him. He says that when you need to get some information, the first thing you should do is go there. The man asks if the men are truly descendants of the legendary blacksmith. Haruki Shindo explains that the bar is always the place to start searching, as it's where they look for the most murky and hidden information, and asks them to remember this for future reference. The man says that all they need to know is where. A woman tells the baristas they know how to flatter girls. A man says he wants the blacksmith to forge him a sword because she, his sister, looks strong. The woman says that this guy is actually stronger than Haruki Shindo, if not dozens of times, then certainly several. Haruki Shindo says, "What is this guy?" The man asks, "What is this guy?" The man says he can't speak for the rumor, but since they're here, maybe he should get him a drink. He says it's not surprising. The man explains that he doesn't have that experience. Haruki Shindo says one glass might be enough. The guy takes the chopsticks. The man says he'll take the whole bottle. Haruki Shindo twists a butter knife. The man stops abruptly, and Haruki Shindo hands over a bottle. The man says it's a butter knife. The guy asks who they are, and the man says that if they need money, they'll buy information. The man explains that it's a shame the guy doesn't know anything and takes a coin. The guy says, "Oh," and the man says the coins are real. Haruki Shindo says he wants to talk. The man asks him to stop. The man explains he can't talk too much about this matter. Haruki Shindo asks what exactly. The man says he'll feel bad if he tells. The man asks if anyone has talked about him before. The girl asks if he doesn't love her. He explains that much has happened, and he has become an outcast for everyone, even his former colleagues. The man explains that even the lord of these lands has taken a dislike to him, and that he is a person who should not be associated with anyone planning to live here or who already lives here. The woman explains that it would be strange if he continued to live with others when they treat him like that, and Haruki Shindo says this. The woman reports that the map to the workshop is in severe disrepair and now lives in a lonely house, mourning not to miss it. The man says he'll do it later. Haruki Shindo reports hearing a creaking sound. He asks if this is where it is. The man says that someone actually lives here, and he explains that who knows, but according to the map, they've come to the right address. The girl calls out to see if anyone is there. A young man says he's here to talk to a girl. A woman with horns whispers to another woman that the man is here to see the girl. A man with a wolf's head explains that he's guarding the entrance and won't let anyone in without permission. Haruki Shindo says everyone's staring at them, but the girl asks him not to talk about it. The man asks what they're doing there. The girl says it's a holy sword and waves it. A bird flies in the sky. The girl notices a rustle in the bushes. Haruki Shindo says to Kaguya. The girl tells Rei that it looks delicious. He asks what she brought today. The girl tells him it's manju from Holy Sword Square. The girl tries the manju. The girl says the filling inside was amazing, but the manju itself is delicious too. The man listens to her. Haruki says that since Kaguya can't go outside, he has to bring her things, and he still has pinworms. Kaguya thanks him and tells him that swordmasters came to the square today, and they were really cool, even though they couldn't draw their swords, but she would like to be like them. The guy says he brought dango from the main street today and explains that they're honey-flavored and delicious, but he can't eat them anymore. The man is surprised. A woman reports being scolded and told her food must first be tested for poison. The woman says she mustn't die until she fulfills her mission and leaves the place too. The man says he knows she bought them for food, but asks for forgiveness. The guy moves suddenly. The girl says something happened. The girl remains silent. The woman says she did it herself, and reminds him she's already told him about it. The woman asks what, exactly. The man explains he asked the salesperson to teach him how to do it himself. The man says they're safe now. A guy hands a girl 2 balloons on a stick and asks if she can see them. The girl looks at them and says, okay then. The guy gets nervous and asks, well, how are you? Ray says it's delicious, really, really delicious. The guy smiles back. The girl announces that she's decided to become a sword master, and Haruki Shindo says that he will definitely draw the holy sword. The guy says they're going to go out to eat together. The girl says it's okay. The girl and the boy talk about him becoming a student and exclaim together. The girl with tails expresses her gratitude for purchasing the 3rd volume of the comic, and explains that Haruki, having taken up the sacred sword and realized that she is a chef, meets different people and prepares a variety of dishes, which always makes her excited when reading Tena-sensei's text. She explains. Haruki Shindo asks if the cows here are really that big. He explains that he too fell with 1 blow, asking if that's true. The girl explains that Lady Tamamo doesn't allow the spoils to be cut up. The girl says it's her cow. Haruki explains that he had to strike with his sheath. Iris says she's strong beyond all bounds, and asks if Haruki really told her that. Haruki Shindo says he wants to make it for lunch. The woman says she's embarrassed to offer it in front of a live cow. He says they are. The man asks what they are doing there. Haruki Shindo says that if there's no rain, the harvest will be good, and reports that there will be a good harvest of rice this year. The girl explains that last year, due to the rain, the harvest was poor. The boy asks if they are the Lord's men. The man with the marks on his face says there's no doubt about it. He's a descendant of the Holy Sword's blacksmith and orders them to leave. He says he won't roll out the Holy Sword for them. The guy says they were supposed to introduce themselves. Haruki Shindo tells the girl with the ears that he's not good at talking to people. Zemel Sujuo informs her that she is the commander-in-chief of the guard. The man explains that they have no relationship with the lord of these lands and have a request for him, asking him to simply listen to them. The woman calls the man brother. The woman says she has nothing, but she can listen. The man laughs. The guy explains that he really does have nothing. Haruki Shindo says that this place seems to have everything for forging. He says that for a descendant and such a forge, the swords are a very good result. The woman says she hasn't had guests in years. The man asks what they want from him. The man says that they heard that he is a descendant of the blacksmith who forged the holy sword, and so they have a request. The boy says he knows about the holy sword again. Haruki Shindo asks if he's mistaken, and explains that with the holy sword, the guards will likely become much stronger for various wars. He says that he has never made a single sword for such purposes and orders her to leave. The girl remains silent. The woman explains that she understands Haruki Shindo's feelings, but it seems they are misunderstanding each other, and says that she is not asking for a new holy sword to be forged for him. Haruki Shindo asks why they came to him then. The guy tells him that a man named Haruki has taken out a holy sword and wants him to work on a real sword. The man says, "Surprised, huh?" The man laughs and says the captain's joke was funny, but Haruki Shindo asks him not to joke like that. The man explains that if they had any cunning in their plans, they should have thought of a more truthful deception, and warns us not to pull the wool over our eyes. The man says to come next time without the holy sword. The boy screams that the sword is broken. Haruki Shindo tells him that the sword is indeed real, and the boy explains that it really did break. He and the girl listen to the man, who says that this is truly a job that only he can handle. The man swallows. The man explains what it means to return him to his former appearance, and asks if they have a request. Haruki Shindo and the girl answer hesitantly. Haruki says they want the sword turned into a kitchen knife. Haruki explains that it's not just a piece of iron, but a true holy sword, and says he knows this from his profession. The man asks, "A kitchen knife?" Haruki confirms. Haruki explains that he's just an ordinary cook and therefore couldn't have done it. The man says that, as far as he remembers, only a true swordsman can remove the sword. Haruki explains that if he really was the one who pulled the sword, he should have proof from the palace. The man asks if that's what it's about. The guy says that the knives are also real and explains that Lady Kaguya wouldn't have given them away just like that. Haruki Shindo asks what the chef could have done to obtain the scabbard. He explains that he prepared a dish, specifically fried vegetables. Haruki Shindo explains that the sword was supposed to be one that would never crack, but now it's in a sorry state. Perhaps the sword knows its owner. He says he'll do what they ask. The girl says she has a favor to ask in return. The man apologizes and explains that they don't have a lot of groceries. Haruki Shindo says everything necessary is present and there's nothing out of the ordinary. The girl says, "Here you go, brother." The man explains that it's true and advises using this too. The boy thanks her for the freshest oysters. The man explains that Shiaxia has always had a poor appetite and asks her to prepare a dish for his sister Shiaxia until the sword is ready. Haruki Shindo asks if what the other person will be using is enough. The other person replies that it is enough. The guy grabs a pumpkin from the table. The man is silent and looks at the guy thoughtfully. The man expresses surprise. The woman says the dish is called arroz verde, a vegetable risotto with oysters. The man says it's a leftover dish. The man asks to get some before it gets cold. Haruki says that this is a real chef's dish. The girl says that Haruki is beautiful. Haruki Shindo thanks him, explains that arroz is Spanish for rice and verde means green, and says it's a very fitting name. The woman tells him there is only one room in the house, and he explains that this is not a problem as he is used to being alone. The guy says, okay, try it now. Then he tastes the food and makes a sound. The girl eats silently, and the guy reacts to the taste. The guy says it's delicious. The woman says it's not worth talking about. The man with the cup says, "Wow, it's delicious." Haruki Shindo says he can't imagine what delicious dish could be made with what they had, explaining that pumpkin, pea pods, and oysters make a great list of ingredients for a liquid dish. The man says, "Oh." The girl drinks from a cup. He asks if Xiaxia is tasty, and Xiaxia says that it is. He says that now he is definitely willing to work on the debris and says that it is excellent. Haruki Shindo says that it's rare to see someone take such good care of their knife, and for someone so careful, he wants to do the best job possible on their tool. He says that the unbreakable holy sword is broken, and he's sure that's a sign that the sword's original form didn't suit him. He says that everyone thinks he can forge a new holy sword, but that's not true. Haruki explains that no matter how close to perfect he creates, the man explains that, according to legend, there can only be one such holy sword in this world, as the orichalcum used to forge it was lost and existed only in the sword's quantity. The man explains that, more importantly, it is the soul of the sword's future owner. Haruki Shindo says, the guy asks the man to trust him and entrust him with this job. The man says to trust him and entrust him with this job. Haruki Shindo explains that a well-maintained and sharpened knife is an essential part of being a chef. He says that he will be with his interlocutor all the way to the top. Haruki Shindo says he relies on them. The man explains he's gardening. The man cuts fruit from a plant. The girl says hello to Siasaya. Haruki asks where the captain is. Siasaya says the captain is at his place and is going shopping. The man says that his brother hasn't left the forge for 10 days, and the girl explains that it's because her brother hasn't forged for a long time. Haruki Shindo says that one look is enough to understand how weak the land is here, but it would probably be cruel to say these words to such a small girl. He says all he can do is cook. The man says he doesn't accept pity or favor from others, so he offers to use what they have. The girl and the man are sitting at the table. The girl is eating. Haruki Shindo explains that he's quite stubborn, just like an old man. He says that perhaps because he's an outcast to everyone, that's why he's in this position. He says he can't let the girl leave so easily and asks her to wait. He then explains that he wants to talk to her. The girl asks Haruki if he'll cook something today, and Haruki says of course he will, since he promised his brother. The girl says she can't wait. Siasya asks if she loves her brother, and Haruki Shindo says, "Don't tell me." Siasya thoughtfully replies, and Haruki Shindo says, surprised, "Ah." He says that his brother can be stubborn, so sometimes he doesn't like him, and if we give a precise answer, the man says that it's clear. The woman says that if he had done as the Lord asked, they would be rich now, and the shop would be bigger, and that he is always firm in what he wants to do and what is right for him. The man says that he made a promise to protect his father's workshop, but it is ruining him. Haruki Shindo says that he was wrong and thought that she was still young, but she already understands her situation in her own way. He asks Sasya if she doesn't mind how her brother acts. Haruki Shindo says that even knowing his imperfect swords will be welcomed by the people, he continues to stand his ground. He explains that the way he does things doesn't lead to anything new. He forges, smelts, forges, hammers, and repeats this day after day. He asks why the girl decided to stay with him, understanding everything that's happening. The girl explains that he's her only true family member. He explains that he's the type of person who prefers not to interfere in other people's affairs, but something inside him starts to itch furiously upon hearing about. A woman asks Yakuza for help. Haruki Shindo agrees. He says that the potatoes need to be cut into circles, and the girl says that it is very simple and fun. Haruki Shindo says he made a promise to protect his father's workshop, but that would be like destroying himself. The girl explains that he forges, smelts, forges, hammers, and repeats this day after day. Haruki Shindo explains that even knowing that he is unseen. In the top right, he says that he, of course, is one of those who prefers not to meddle in other people's affairs. In the bottom right, it's stated that the girl is not just a girl, but always stands by her brother's back. In the top center, it's stated that the girl understands Luzia's faith and principles perfectly. The top right text states that he would like to help her take a step toward her goal. Haruki Shindo says that a little intervention won't make things worse. The girl explains that she has a small favor to ask. The woman reports that it is a sweet potato, which can be eaten raw, and that it is very tasty. He says that it is indeed a sweet potato. The woman calls Haruki. Haruki says hi and starts to explain something, but then stops. Haruki says he just did. The woman asks Haruki. Haruki Shindo reports that he felt something. The man says everything is ready and suggests trying it. He is silent, examining the knife. He reports that he has a strong feeling that all the parts of this knife are where they should be. He says that it is perfect. Haruki Shindo reports that this is incomparable to the shard he held recently, and that it is the pinnacle of all blades in the entire world. He says this is the true brilliance of the holy sword. He reveals that he has fused all 6 knives entrusted to him, mixing them with the holy knife, and explains that it would be pointless if the holy knife were only good for one purpose. He explains that now, just by thinking about the right knife, he will instantly take that form. Haruki Shindo says the finishing touch is this. Haruki Shindo says, wow. The man reports that even the scabbard is now the right size. The man explains that Lady Kaguya said that a holy blade without a scabbard is not holy at all. He says that whoever the holy blade chooses has the right to draw it from its scabbard, and now it is. The boy speaks to Haruki. The next panel shows a hand clutching the hilt of a sword. The guy says it was his best work yet. Haruki Shindo says thank you. The man reports that he was very unsure whether he was forging the holy sword correctly, but after the metal was easily forged, he realized that he was not mistaken. Haruki Shindo says it would be a sin not to cook with this knife for the last time. The man says he needs to take care of it now. The guy tells Haruki that here it is. The girl says that these are their supplies, and her brother told her to use them. The guy thanks the girl. She says that these are excellent potatoes, just what we need for dinner. The girl asks what Haruki Shindo will cook, and Haruki Shindo says he needs to think about it. The girl says she'd like her brother to be like Haruki Shindo, and Haruki Shindo explains that his brother is the best blacksmith in the world, the girl says. He says that today's work will finally be enough for him, but perhaps he can change today. The man says that he naturally sees this as a problem. The woman explains that dinner promises to be amazing. Haruki Shindo declares that for the sake of these two's new lives, he is putting all his strength, from the tip of the blade to the hilt. Haruki Shindo cuts a vegetable with a knife. The top right fragment shows neatly cut slices. The bottom right fragment shows shiny sections. He explains that the cut was made in such a way that the cells remained alive, and attributes this to the power of the knife. The guy says everything's ready. He explains that since the man arrived, Sayasha's health has improved significantly. Haruki Shindo says that this is the man's last meal, and that he not only paid the entire amount, but also took care of their meals. The man says he should thank Haruki Shindo. He says that this time the cooking experience was the most enjoyable ever, and explains that the dish is potato galettes, which he is presenting to the best artisan in the world. The dark-haired guy asks Poom what he wants. Poom looks at him. The dark-haired guy says he'll try. In the rightmost panel, a man says he's stirring the contents of a spoon into something on a plate. In the middle panel, a man explains he's about to try the dish. In the left panel, a man says the dish is fluffy. The guy says it's delicious, the girl says it's fragrant, and the sauce is delicious. Haruki Shindo says that their potatoes were able to transform like this thanks to the holy knife, and that he is not an expert in cooking, but he can say that this dish is excellent. It is reported that the dish cooked with the heat from the oven of bread is a traditional dish of the country X, and pommes à la boulangère translates as baker's potatoes. He says that in fact he prepared something else. Haruki Shindo explains that this is the real pommes à la boulangère, which is made by slowly and carefully cooking sliced potatoes in chicken broth that has been pre-fried with onions. He asks to try it and compare. The girl tastes it. The guy reports that the flavor of the ingredients was more palatable, and he thinks the old one was tastier. The man explains that this food is also perfectly prepared and delicious in its own way. Haruki Shindo explains that in cooking, there is a concept called gastronomy. He explains that these two dishes were prepared with exactly the same ingredients. Haruki Shindo explains that galettes are a classic gourmet dish, while the other dish is for true gastronomes, he says. He says that classic home-cooked dishes and their alternative, traditional dishes, are two very important trends that should be respected and presented to future generations in a way that they will love, and explains that this does not mean that you should stick to only one trend. Haruki Shindo states that, unfortunately, he doesn't have that kind of power yet. The man reacts silently to this. The guy says that even he lacks experience and explains that a knife doesn't cook a dish, but a chef runs a knife across a board. He says that he lacks experience too. Haruki Shindo tells Liu A-san that they should both strive for the top, but not just the top, but forward as well. Liu A-san asks what he means. Haruki Shindo explains that they must strive not only upwards, but also forwards, otherwise there will be no progress. The guy says he knows perfectly well that he is grumpy and conservative. Haruki Shindo says he's been forging metal all this time for the Holy Sword, and that's why he was able to create this piece. He says this knife and this dish are undoubtedly what he wanted to see. He says that the workshop isn't something that can be developed and advanced, especially here, and that nothing can be done. He also says that he doesn't want to accept anyone's charity or pity because it's a dead end. Haruki Shindo says that he will give it to Shasa then. Haruki Shindo says that here. The elf explains that Rin-san will probably be very upset that she gave the pendant to a girl, but it will be a wonderful response to what she did with the pendant for Mari-san, and asks him to tell her what he did with it. He explains that this is why he is crying. Haruki Shindo says he was just looking for new scissors and offers to do whatever she wants with them, sell them, carry them, or keep them. The girl explains that she could go on a trip with her brother, let go of the workshop, and go off on her own, and the man explains that she's free to do whatever she wants. The girl calls her brother and suggests leaving this city to see the world. She wants to show the world the best blacksmith. The man listens to her. Haruki Shindo says, "Well, that's it," then clenches his teeth and presses his hand to his head. He reports that he cannot open the sword. The woman says she can't pull out her knife, and Haruki Shindo says that's what it looks like. The man explains that it's his job and apologizes for any inconvenience. Haruki Shindo thanks the man for the knife. The man asks where they're going now, and the woman suggests they go to the desk first. The girl says it will take a long time to walk, but they can do it. The man says this will be the beginning of their journey, and he will let the master swordsman examine his swords. Haruki Shindo says it's a great idea and thinks they'll get along with him, and the man replies, "Yeah, right." A man with a sword scolds someone, calling him a bastard, and a girl and a guy call him swordsman. He says that next time he will come as a worthy blacksmith, and the man hopes that they will meet again. The man says he too will become a chef worthy of his knife, to which Haruki Shindo replies that it will happen again someday. The woman says there's a nice breeze. The man and woman say goodbye on the road. The guy says the rice balls are delicious, but too small to fill him up. The girl says the rice balls are delicious and filling. The couple says the knife turned out like this. The woman says that no one except Haruki Shindo can pull out the knife, and Haruki Shindo says that it is a real holy knife. The woman says she didn't think Haruki would turn him into a knife and calls Haruki a truly strange creature. Haruki silently holds the knife. Haruki Shindo says he wouldn't be able to use the new tool any other way. The girl tells him he's happy. Haruki Shindo explains he has a new partner, and it fills him with joy. The woman says, "Here's how it is." The woman says that today the guy just cut up some fruit for her. The woman asks if they're upset, and explains that she's not really upset, but since he's such a great cook, he could have. Then the woman, amazed, asks what it tastes like, and Haruki Shindo smiles. He explains that his mouth is overwhelmed by the taste of the fruit, and the texture is strangely velvety, and these are unusual sliced fruits. He says he wanted to show the difference between regular knives and his own, so he sliced the fruit with particular care. The woman asks if she liked it. Haruki Shindo says that's the most important thing. He apologizes for starting such a conversation so soon after his arrival. The woman explains that she received an invitation to participate in the Holy Sword Tournament. Haruki Shindo asks what kind of tournament it is. The woman explains that she said so. The man says that every year in the capital they hold a fighting tournament to determine the master of the sword, and this year they decided to hold it again. Haruki Shindo says they've decided and asks what's stopping them. The woman explains that it's a tournament dedicated to the holy sword, the main attraction of the program, and expresses dissatisfaction. The man says that someone came to the capital this year and accidentally stole Earth's holy sword, and says, "Oh." He explains that participating in the tournament is a matter of a warrior's honor and pride, and asks if he can participate in such a tournament. The man says, Haruki Shindo says that Iris, she says so. The woman says that until this year she performed and tested her strength every year, but this year she asks for forgiveness, since she is not a warrior, but a cook. The woman says it's a warrior's tournament, right, and a cook like her can't participate in a warrior's tournament. Then the woman says, The woman says she thought she would deny it. Haruki Shindo says he'll talk to Iris. The man asks if he knows what she'll say. The guy says he doesn't think Iris will decide to back out either. The woman says they can't celebrate that possibility anyway, as circumstances are different this year. The woman is thinking about what to do. The woman reports that Haruki has decided to withdraw from the tournament, even though she wanted him to compete in the Holy Sword Tournament this year. Haruki Shindo says the best result is reaching the semifinals, and reports that this has happened 7 times. The woman informs him that the best fighter must enter the tournament, and she's willing to pass the baton to Haruki. The man explains that he's a chef, but also a warrior, and several times stronger than the woman. A woman announces that there is a full moon today. Haruki Shindo reacts silently. The woman says that this is the quality she likes about Eri, and allows Eri to clarify something on this full moon if she is unsure about something. Haruki Shindo, thanks, Ms. Tamamo. Ms. Tamamo asks what the situation will be like and offers to keep an eye on it. The woman says it probably won't work. The man says, oh, when he cuts the fruit with a knife. The girl says the knife doesn't work, and Haruki Shindo says only he can use it. Haruki Shindo explains that he doesn't have the strength to do so. Haruki says he thought he could trick the sword if he drew it beforehand, and asks for forgiveness. The woman thanks Haruki and says she's already proud to have held the holy knife in her hands. Haruki Shindo picks up a knife and begins chopping vegetables. He says he can't believe he pulled off such a joke, not just getting a sword, but turning it into a knife, and admits it surpassed his wildest imagination. A nearby girl applauds, and Haruki smiles. He says that becoming the master also surprised him. The girl explains that she thought she was keeping up with Haruka and thinks it might be for the best. He says it's impressive. The woman asks Haruki if he is there. Haruki looks at her silently. The guy says the moon is beautiful tonight. The girl asks Iris if this place brings back memories. Iris says so. Haruki Shindo says probably so, then he stomps his foot sharply. He says that a knife can only be used for eating and offers to take a sword like his. He also addresses with the exclamation, hey! The woman tells Haruki to fight her. Haruki Shindo asks to wait and asks what all this means. The woman reports that she heard that he refused to participate. He says that this is true because he is a cook, not a warrior. Haruki Shindo says he can't participate in the tournament if someone else aspires to become a swordmaster. He explains that the other person aspires to become a swordmaster and asks if that's true. He says he's always so kind, but his kindness can be foolish. The man smiles silently. Haruki Shindo reports that the sword is shining. He says it's painful to admit, but he's wrong, and asks if the other man says he aspires to become a swordmaster. The man replies with a question and expresses surprise. The woman explains that all the talk about becoming strong seemed interesting and prideful to her, and she strived for it, but she can't achieve it because there are those stronger than her, and this reason stands right in front of her. She says that despite this, life goes on, even as she knows she can no longer become stronger. The girl says that if Haruki stops pretending to be a cook, she'll let him become a swordmaster because she has nothing else left. Haruki remains silent. Then Haruki thinks it's all a big misunderstanding. Haruki Shindo says that she was smiling all this time, and because of this smile, he did not notice. He says he is such a fool. The guy tells Haruki that they will clear everything up in battle. The woman says this is her last small stubbornness before the genius who forced her to abandon her dream, a speck of dust as insignificant as herself. She hoped that Haruki Shindo would someday understand her, but it turns out he doesn't understand her at all. The woman asks Haruki Shindo. The woman says that it is more accurate to find out what she was striving for by stopping halfway through. Haruki Shindo says he can't say it was fun, but he's glad it's over. He asks the girl if she knows what werewolves are. The girl explains that werewolves are creatures that, during the full moon, transform into wolves and begin to howl. She explains that they can be recognized by this howl and by their appearance in the moonlight. Haruki Shindo says that he can't afford to be weak because weakness means death. Haruki says that he is now at the true peak of his powers, and a girl says that they will begin Haruki. Haruki Shindo reports that something has disappeared. The man makes a sharp movement with his hand and then looks back in surprise. A girl with ears and armor suddenly appears behind Haruki and says something has disappeared. The image has no text or speech, but depicts two wolves standing on rocks and howling at the moon. Haruki Shindo reports that something has disappeared. The man suddenly grabs the hilt of his sword. The girl attacks the man, striking him with her sword, and the man tries to defend himself. The man stands with his sword, noticing what's happening. He says the enemy is fast and shows how strong the influence of the full moon is. The man with the sword reacts to the attack and parries the blow. Haruki reports that Iris was able to escape the gaze of a man with skill and is using full power. Iris then strikes the man. The woman asks what happened to Haruki and says that with such diligence, he will never take off anyone's head. The woman asks if he'll take his head off and says that's the kind of battle they're having. Haruki Shindo tensely parries the sword blow and prepares for battle. He says that if he can't win, he'll die, and asks them not to pity him. The man says that he doesn't intend to pity him and that Haruki must die. Haruki Shindo says that if he wanted, he could have stabbed him at the very beginning. Haruki Shindo explains that he's already keeping up with his speed. The girl says that's not enough and that it's thoughtless for her. He says that perhaps he is not really a warrior. The girl says that maybe she was mistaken. The image shows someone tightly gripping the hilt of a sword. The woman says that no matter how much he apologizes, she's already drawn him into her dreams and had a dream. The man explains that he's passing the baton of dream chasing to Haruki. A boy deflects a sword strike aimed at him. Haruki Shindo expresses surprise. Haruki Shindo and the other man engage in combat, crossing swords. The woman with the ears holds a sword and looks at the boy, who is tightly gripping the hilt of his sword, looking frightened. The woman with the ears watches him closely. Haruki Shindo says he won. The girl says she won. He says that he doesn't understand why he hesitated and explains that he can't believe how he could have done such a thing. Haruki Shindo says that even for him, on a full moon, there are those he can't compare to. He says that even so, he wants to overcome them. He explains that he can't and asks if it's so bad in that case that he needs to entrust his dream to someone else. Then he asks for forgiveness. Haruki Shindo says that all he has is his skill. He never grew or wanted to grow as a warrior, and he can never become one. The woman says that something she can easily strive for, combat prowess, is unbearable for Iris, who lacks skill. The man explains the situation. Haruki Shindo explains that she needs to understand that he won't be able to achieve mastery for her. The girl says she changed her clothes and exclaims in surprise. The woman says the meat is delicious. She explains that it's soft and melts in your mouth. The man explains that the meat is prepared using a special recipe and says it was marinated for several hours. The woman says the food is delicious. The woman says it's delicious. Haruki Shindo says it's using a skill. He explains that the ribs are braised in red wine and grilled over coals for a crispy crust. The girl tries the dish and says that she's not very good at this and she doesn't understand what's delicious. The girl says she's not sad anymore and reports that Haruki cooked a dish just for her for the first time. The girl says that this is really the first time Haruki Shindo eats silently. The woman says that she definitely likes this taste and it fills her with pleasant feelings, and also reports that it is a slightly contrasting taste that she has not tried before. The girl says that after trying Haruki's dishes, she began to understand that he has his own path and can't stray from it at someone else's request, and also says that he is, after all, a chef. Haruki apologizes for having to cook for someone like him. The woman says there's one more thing she needs to apologize for. Haruki Shindo says he always saw her as a cook and a strong fighter. He says that she was not mistaken and he understands what she means. Haruki Shindo says that it's not as if what the girl said is completely wrong, and the girl explains that he doesn't understand. The girl explains that just because he's a strong fighter doesn't mean he's a warrior. The woman explains that it may seem like there is no difference, but there is. He listens. Haruki Shindo says that almost everyone sees him as something other than the Haruki he actually is, and that he's not alone in that. The woman says it's a little late and embarrassing to say, but now she finally understands, having tasted his cooking, that they took him for granted as a warrior. He explains that this is understandable. The text states that in this world, the most important thing. Haruki Shindo says the only people who saw him as a cook were Ms. Tamamo and Sariya, and that, of course, it was the girl who hired him. Haruki Shindo apologizes and agrees, and the man says he should have known Haruki had fought in the field. He says the title of Knife Master is a status worth striving for. The woman says she doesn't know how to achieve this, but as a chef, she thinks this path would be most suitable for Haruki Shindo. Haruki Shindo says that would be great. The woman asks, "Tell me," and Haruki Shindo asks if it's okay for the captain of the guard to advise such things. The girl tells him not to tell anyone about this. He explains what it means to strive for one's own mastery as a chef. He says that, having the strength of a warrior, he will continue to live as a chef. He says that this is a rather wild and fantastical aspiration, but at least for him, it will be. The woman says, Haruki Shindo confirms that it is. Haruki Shindo says that then he has no reason to participate in the tournament. He explains that this is how it works, and the girl agrees. Then he says that he still can't come to terms with it, and the girl asks. Haruki Shindo asks why the captain is giving up on her dream so easily, saying she shouldn't. The captain explains that it would be harder for her to become a chef than for Haruki to become a warrior, and admits she had decided otherwise but doubts it. She reveals that she defeated him. He says that the path to the title of swordmaster cannot be closed to her. He tells Iris Spanier that she does not want to achieve her mastery. Haruki Shindo says, "Huh?" The girl with the ear says it's a sword. She looks at the sword and explains that it's very heavy. Then the girl struggles to pull the sword out of its sheath. He offers the captain a serious and healthy bet in which either he will be the first to achieve mastery as a cook, or the captain, but as Vaughn. Haruki Shindo says he can definitely achieve this, but he won't give up his position. The girl with the sword looks at him silently. The moon and several trees are visible in the sky. A guy drinks tea. Haruki Shindo looks at him from the doorway. The woman says the smoothie is pretty good and reports that it seems to be healthy. Haruki Shindo says that today seems like the perfect time for a change, and is surprised when he's asked to participate in the tournament again. The woman reveals that it's their shared secret. Haruki Shindo asks if something's wrong with Eri, smelling the scent of puberty. The woman laughs. He says that for him and Eri, they can separate as much as they want, but not for him personally. The woman asks what's going on. He says he has a request regarding this detail. The woman says she'd like to at the upcoming tournament. Then she falls silent and continues. The woman says she's a knight and explains that her sword is a symbol of honor and protection. The man explains that he's a guard and says he's always ready to protect those in need. A couple of months later, Haruki Shindo reports that this is the capital. A man, a woman, and a man announce that Iris has won again. Iris is standing with a sword, and the man with the wolf's head is sitting on the ground. He says that Iris has won again. The woman explains that last time it was Iris who fell to her knees, meaning she achieved today's result by sweat. Haruki Shindo says he wonders who made her like this, and that these are Iris's true powers. The woman asks what happened that night. The man explains that many different things happened. The woman explains that this means he definitely did something. He reports that it was ultimately decided that Iris would compete. The girl says that they would definitely bring back souvenirs from the capital. He explains that Iris decided to ignore the scores and opinions of others and competed, and her agility and contour. Haruki Shindo reports that Iris's opponent today is so strong that even he lost. The woman says she's never heard of such a thing. Haruki Shindo explains that he was upset to hear that the opponent wouldn't take up a sword, since he could have been there, and calls it magnificent. The woman reports that the spectators are already at the peak of their excitement for the upcoming fight, and that he will be there after them. He apologizes and says he will perform in the competition exactly as he wants. The woman expresses frustration that no one could have thought otherwise. The woman says there's no point in complaining now, but it was very difficult to prepare everything for Haruki, so he should understand, and that failure is not forgiven. Haruki says she even scared him a little, but everything will be fine. Haruki Shindo says he has no plans to lose today. The girl looks at him silently. The woman says he always gives, and you never know what's on his mind. The girl says it will be an interesting spectacle. The woman says that even in the form of a knife, if its owner wins the competition, no one will have any questions, but what will begin very soon, and sooner or later it would come to this. Haruki Shindo informs him that the bet is already on him, and all that's left is to watch. The girl tells him not to screw up, as the preparations were expensive, and Haruki Shindo thanks her. He makes a grinding sound and strikes with his sword. The guy says he has an idea why the sword is stronger than the last cross, but it's not worth asking now. Haruki Shindo says the sword is strong, much stronger than the last cross. The man grips the sword's hilt. A woman reports that a monster has appeared in the forest, and everyone present is surprised. He explains that he is ready to fight this monster. The boy strikes with the sword. The girl parries it. The girl says it was too easy and says it's her turn now. The boy explains he didn't mean to use all his strength. The woman says it's over. The woman thanks him. Haruki Shindo waves. He says that victory was just around the corner. He says that it's a complete defeat, even if there was a full moon, but at least it's progress. The guy says that next time he will win. The guy says it seems he didn't spare Haruki's sword. Haruki says it's safe to say his sword lost to the guys. The woman with the ears says that it seems like he was the one who took care of it. Haruki Shindo asks if it was him. Haruki Shindo calls the swordmaster and swordsmith a very strong team. The woman with the ears replies that perhaps he wouldn't have won. The woman with the ears says that now isn't the time. He says okay. The woman says she's leaving then. The woman says they'll start soon and she's interested in what the audience will think. The woman asks, Eri, are you here? The guy says he can't say he's 100% ready, but everything is prepared here to help him use all his skills. Haruki Shindo asks Iris how she is. Is she ready? The girl explains that she doesn't know how to express herself and turns to Haruki, and Haruki says that it's so unexpected and thanks her. Haruki Shindo says he should be thanking him, and also explains that he actually thought that being in 2 jobs wasn't so bad, and tells him that he needs to keep a blade in both the royal guard and the kitchen. He says that even though he understands his lack of warrior's resolve, he realizes that this power is a real cheat in this world, and he wonders how long he can live so well in this world. Haruki Shindo says he thanks Iris. Iris remains silent. Haruki Shindo says he thanks Iris too. The woman says the fish with the holiest blade on its nose looks wonderful, but how it will all go is a good question. Haruki Shindo says to use this opportunity skillfully. He reports that sometimes he seriously thinks about it. In the first panel, a man asks how he should live in this world, as a cook or as a warrior. In the second panel, the man explains whether he should use his ability and whether there is a truer way to use it. In the third panel, the man explains that even if he does wrong, he has no reason to complain about what he has. Haruki Shindo says that even if he were to live as a chef, it wouldn't be the same. The boy says he'll live in a safe castle, cook, and receive praise, but he doubts that's enough, considering it's a whole isekai. He also wonders if he'll be satisfied with such a simple life. Haruki Shindo says that if he can do something, why not try it? The man explains that he didn't kill it because he thought it would be a delicacy if cooked, and asks what he was thinking then. He says that in this world he wants to pursue his mastery with the power that will help him, and that's why he must do it today. He explains that Tamamo-san has prepared everything for today, Iris has shown him the right path, and Rin-san, Saraya-san, and Aizel are truly. Haruki Shindo says that this is why it will become a Thanksgiving dish, and that he will try to express in this dish everything he has received in this world, including himself. He then opens the bottle and lights the fire in the cauldron. He says the fire should be lower, done carefully and with love. The woman says this is done with a sense of gratitude and to prevent the meat from getting cold. Haruki Shindo says everything is ready. The man explains that it is coarsely chopped swordfish, sautéed in oil, seasoned with black pepper, and topped with pumpkin cream and a dash of black beer. The girl says the name of the dish is very unusual and asks if it's necessary to use low heat. Haruki Shindo says it's very important. The woman asks if he is sure about the dish, to which he says he is, and explains that it is his signature dish. Haruki Shindo says, "A piece then." Haruki Shindo says this while simultaneously raising his fork to his mouth. The girl expresses surprise and remains silent. The man looks at her with genuine attention. The woman reports that, on that day, she said she wanted to see how Haruki Shindo's journey would end. Haruki Shindo smiles. He says that he now sees that the interlocutor's path will not end soon, but will extend higher and higher. The woman says everything is wonderful and orders Haruki Shindo to step. The woman tells him to keep going on his path. He confirms that this is exactly what he planned to do. The man explains that it's a meat dish prepared according to an ancient recipe, and it's delicious. The man and woman explain that this dish was prepared especially for guests and ask them to try it. The man and woman explain that this treat symbolizes friendship and respect between their peoples. An elderly man says he can't take it. The man and woman react with surprise. The woman says it can't be a pawn shop and asks if they're selling a fake. The man explains it's the real deal. Haruki Shindo says he's on his way. The salesman asks them to wait. The woman says that he is so good that she cannot take him. She is afraid that few people will agree to take him on bail, and one can say that he is priceless. The man says he heard about a new shipment of jewelry and asks if he could become the administrator. The woman remains silent. Haruki Shindo says that even so, maybe they know someone. The woman explains, what if? The man and woman exchange words, and he says, The man asks for her attention and says he'd like to show her something. The woman calls him Mari-san. The woman says she's the queen of jewelry. The man asks why such a lady would come to a pawn shop. The woman explains she came to stroll through the market and buys or pawns jewelry just like today. The man says she wanted to do the same today. The woman reports that the manager said they might want to eat first as they're hungry. The man explains that milk nabe is considered a delicacy in the capital, although he's never tried it. The guy says that since Haruki recommended this dish, it can't be bad. The girl expresses surprise. The woman asks if the girl knows Haruki. The woman says that from now on she'll tell him more about the stone and Haruki. The man explains that since it was their stone, then the woman says that trading for scissors is very much in Haruki's style. The woman says it was her gift, and the man says he won't buy it back. The woman explains that her interlocutor is of much greater value than the stone, and adds that he's also offering to go with her. The man and the woman react to this, and the man says, the woman tells her brother not to go anywhere, and the girl calls him brother. The man notices that there are a lot of people here and asks what's going on. The woman explains that this is the place of the holy sword, the former place, and that it's strange that the sword isn't here, but people still come. She says that perhaps people. The woman and girl ask if this is what they wanted to show, to which the woman replies, no. The man says he hasn't seen the master swordsman in a while. Haruki Shindo says he came to meet her, and the woman replies that she knew he would continue to come even if he wasn't there. He asks why the girl has come. The girl says she heard he's looking for a new sword for the competition. He asks her not to be rude. The man explains that both swords are descendants of the great blacksmith of the holy sword. They were the ones who reforged it. A man asks if Haruki Shindo will forge a holy sword. Haruki Shindo says that's not a lie. The tattooed guy clenches his fist and says he's the best blacksmith. He's confident he can make a sword that will be worthy of the swordsmith. The tattooed girl says she's confident of it. The tattooed guy says no. Haruki Shindo asks for a sword to be forged for him. The man and Haruki Shindo look at each other. Ray Secord says he's the best swordsman. The man says okay. A boy asks to make him a sword that will help prove it. A man and a girl stand next to each other. The woman says she's honored she could help and laughs. The man says he didn't mean to be indebted to her. The girl says she's cold and continues sweeping the leaves that are blown away by the wind. Haruki Shindo is silent, holding a basket of vegetables. He shows the girl a carrot and smiles, and the girl looks at him with surprise and admiration. Haruki announces that he's ready to return, to which the girl with the ears asks how he feels about that. The man addresses Haruki by name. The girl with the ears explains that she's decided to order a sword, but it's already full for months to come, and asks if she's been able to talk to Lu Aim. The woman says they did a great job this time too, then says it's time to go back. Haruki Shindo holds a jar of jam and stands at the kitchen table. The girl says that she finds it very tasty and expresses delight. The girl asks if she liked it. Haruki Shindo says that any of his dishes is like a heavenly blessing. He explains that there are no holy swordfish left from last time, so this time it's a regular dish. The girl says she really wanted to try this dish and apologizes. He says that the same thing happened today as with the fried vegetables, and his dishes, although a little, have begun to gain breadth. Iris-san says it's also thanks to Rin-san. Rin-san replies, Naya. The girl says she doesn't remember doing anything like that, but since she's talking about it, that means she did something. Haruki Shindo says she can ask Haruki. He says that, as usual, Mrs. Tamamo called him. The man says he's already used to it. The girl explains that this dish is from a competition. He says, Haruki Shindo says his performance was amazing and he won't get tired of repeating it, and the girl says she watched as he was chained up. He congratulates her on the final and says it was graceful, and the man laughs and says that the last opponent turned out to be stronger. The woman thanks Haruki and says she'll win next time. Haruki replies that he should be the one thanking her. The girl with the ears says the situation seems suspicious. Haruki Shindo says it's time for them to go. The girl with the ears and the man with the ponytail start to leave, and the girl with the ribbon on her head looks at them questioningly. The girl says that, as usual, the end of the competition was great and that the interlocutor deserved praise. The woman says it was admirable. Haruki Shindo thanks her. The woman asks if she understood correctly that Haruki is serious about reaching the top as a chef. Haruki Shindo responds with a question. The woman asks him to forgive her, and he explains that he was tortured and had no other options. The woman says that a chef who is a master of his blade is admirable and something to aspire to. He explains that this is wonderful. The woman explains that. Haruki Shindo says that traditions should be respected, and the woman explains that traditions should not be allowed to limit and confine oneself. The woman says she is not going to give up. The woman tells Haruki to leave the castle. Haruki listens. Haruki Shindo is surprised, and Tamamo says she knows what he wants to say. Haruki Shindo explains that he's not sure he can keep Tamamo in the castle forever, but he acknowledges her path and aspirations, and Tamamo says that she may be greedy, but she's not stupid. The woman says that the island of the four gods is the place where the gods live and that one can meet them. Haruki Shindo says that, simply put, four gods protect this island, and if you really want to seriously connect your life with the Holy Blade, you must visit this place. The woman says that they created everything for the Holy Sword. He reacts to what was said. The woman explains that the first hero was entrusted with his holy sword to cast down evil from this world, and explains that they can definitely help with the wish. The woman tells him to go and travel, discovering his own path and all that, and then explains that she has no intention of limiting Haruki Shindo. Haruki Shindo says that he understands what she means and begins to say that he says he can't understand why this happened and explains that he doesn't know how to fix the situation. Haruki Shindo says he wanted to reach the top with this power, but for a long time he didn't know where to start or how to get to this top. He reports that the island of the four gods seems like the place to go. Haruki Shindo says that she saw all his worries, and in that case, he also wanted to give her something. He places the dough on the table and begins to knead it. Then he pours in dry ingredients from a jar and then puts the dough in the oven. Haruki Shindo says that there are many things in this world that cannot be explained by logic and that he cannot understand why this happens. The woman says it's stolen, a sweet filled with dried fruit soaked in alcohol. The woman says, "Ogo." The woman says it's rather simple for her and asks if it's bread. She then explains that stolen has a different meaning, tunnels, and explains that it's made from marzipan, sugar, and ground nuts rolled into dough, giving it an elongated shape. The girl tries the dessert and says it actually has alcohol in it, and it's so nice. She explains that the flavors mingle in your mouth, and the slight whiff of spice in the air is wonderful. The girl says that the dessert may be simple, but it gets 100 points as a dessert. Haruki Shindo reports using dried fruit soaked in 1-year-old cider, explaining that if the stolen is left in a cool place for several weeks, it will compact, become moist, and infuse with the fruit's juices. The woman says that dried fruit is usually not. Haruki says he lived here for about 10 months after coming here, and, unfortunately, didn't have enough time to make the marinade. He explains that initially, this dish was made only from flour and was considered a food for the poor, but as culture developed, they began adding butter, then spices and marzipan, and that's how it turned into. Haruki Shindo reports that this time, he left the stolen for a while to make it even more delicious, and after it was baked, he coated it with butter and sprinkled it with a lot of powdered sugar, thus preserving both the taste and its condition. He says to Mrs. Tamamo. Mrs. Tamamo reports that she did not plan to discard all traditions and customs. Haruki Shindo says that if he leaves the nest, he will definitely return to it again. The woman informs that when she returns, her marinade will be ready. The girl asks Rin if he knows about the four gods, to which Rin replies that he's never seen them in person. The girl explains that when she worked in the cafeteria, she often heard about them, and it's a popular topic of conversation in songs or stories from customers. Haruki says there's nothing related to the four. The girl says that after the announcement, Haruki Shindo explains that it's good that she's a cook and won't go hungry, and the girl says that it must be exciting to go meet the four gods. He says he was thinking about giving it to her. The girl says it's true. Haruki Shindo explains that food doesn't spoil, so you need to eat little by little. The girl says she understands. The woman tells him he can go, and he bows in response. Then they show a bag containing a gift and a hand opening a door. Finally, he emerges, carrying the bag on his back and clothes in his hand. Haruki Shindo says what the weather is like. He says he's very nervous and explains that if he shows his pass, they should let him through. He then says it's time to hit the road and ends by saying that that's all. The girl screams, calling for Haruki. Haruki Shindo asks Rin-san what happened and what all this is about. Rin-san is breathing heavily. Haruki Shindo is surprised and says he doesn't understand. The girl says that's true, but she thought going with him was more important to her. He explains that he's simply taking paid leave. The girl asks if it's okay to say he resigned from the castle. Haruki Shindo says that even if he imagines it, he has no reason to quit, and says that he and Ms. Tamama have spoken. He doesn't know how long she'll be there, but let's say a year. The girl says that's what she told him. The girl explains that she took and left the leave, and the man says, well, that's how it is. The man says he'll think of something and notes, that's pretty cool, Rin-san. The girl says, okay. Haruki Shindo says that he took onigiri with him, and that after the checkpoint he can eat. The girl says that this is true and is happy. The guy says he didn't plan on having 2 people on the trip, but it's not so bad. The man explains that you should always think twice about what you're planning to do, whether you decide to take on something or give up. The girl says that giving up and continuing might be the right options. Haruki Shindo stands silently nearby. He says that it is best to take them with someone and not alone. Haruki Shindo says they can definitely help him with his wish. He explains that he wants to be on equal terms with those who wield the sword, and, like those who master the art, he strives to pursue it with his head held high. Haruki Shindo explains what's possible after meeting. The man says that rumor has it that it should be somewhere around here, and asks if he'll definitely be there because his stomach won't hold it for long. The guy looks around. The man says, The guy asks if they can smell it, and the man says he can actually smell a strangely pleasant scent coming from there. Haruki Shindo tells them to hurry up or they'll sell out. The girl asks for 1 copper from each. The man thanks for the order and says that he is waiting again. The line of customers moves forward. The girl asks him how many more portions they have. Haruki Shindo says they'll think about it. He explains that if you don't count the portions in the entire line, there will still be 3 left. The girl listens to him. In the distance, several people are running along the road. The boy asks his sister to tell him there's still some soup left. The man says they're on their last 3 helpings. The girl says they're lucky. The men sit and rest. The guy says it was close, and they could have been late. The man explains that, surprisingly, the rumors were true. Haruki Shindo says that in the suburbs, somewhere far away in the forest, the angelic smell of food from an equally angelic dining room emanates, and the dishes cost next to nothing, a copper coin, under. He says he didn't think it would all look so simple. The man asks why she's wearing a maid's outfit, to which the girl replies she doesn't know. The 3 men comment that although she is truly beautiful, the girl asks for 1 copper coin. The man thanks her for waiting and asks if he has any dishes. The girl tells Haruki Shindo that they have their last customers. Haruki Shindo says yes, in front of them. The man asks. He says it's an ovarian risotto with beans. A guy announces he's made an ovarian bean risotto. A man asks what kind of nova it is. 3 men look at the dish in surprise. The guy with horns looks at the cup in his hand. Haruki Shindo says okay, sitting next to 2 men who are also holding cups. The man explains that the dish is rice and beans with some chopped vegetables and asks if it's supposed to be tasty. He then says it's a sin to complain about a dish that costs 1 copper. Then the man suddenly says it's delicious. The guy with horns says it's delicious, and that he thought Haruki Shindo's food was the best in the world, but this one can compete with his. The man explains that his food definitely can't compete with this. The man with the beard explains that the dish is just rice, B. He says he doesn't understand how it's made. The man explains that he won't reveal the secret of his dish and apologizes for accidentally letting it slip. He says that he's talking about a dish. Haruki Shindo explains that he cooks with the broth from boiling vegetables, then first fries the vegetables after the broth and mixes it with the rice, and adds the broth at this stage. He says that this seems to be how he made the risotto. The man explains that he added a little black pepper oil at the end for extra flavor and then elaborates on the steps. Haruki Shindo asks if it's difficult. The man with the bowl replies that they seem to be cooking. The man with horns says that Haruki Shindo explained it from start to finish. He says he's glad it turned out well. The man asks if he's sure. Haruki Shindo says that in gratitude, he simply asks that you remember him. The man replies, of course. Haruki Shindo and the girl walk together. The men watch them. The man says it was great and asks if the others agree, and also asks why the brothers stood up. Another man laughs. The guy with the horn says he's got the hots for that cutie, and the man with the beard calls him a fool and hits him on the head. The man with the beard stands with his arms crossed, while the guy with the horns and the man with the ponytail watch. The man says he would like to try it sometime too. Coins fall against a nightscape with a moon and a house. The girl says today was a very productive day. Haruki Shindo says he thought he'd somehow make do with an outdoor dining area, but numerous restrictions made preparing meals more difficult than he expected. She says that, given the costs, increasing the number of dishes will be difficult, but it seems there are limits. The girl says she's afraid there's nothing she can do, and that if they want to earn more, they'll have to increase the price of the portions. He says it seems there's no other choice. The man says he had some money saved and didn't expect the trip to be so expensive, but he'd like to have something for his pillow. The girl says that even if she increased the price tenfold, people would still buy her dishes, but she's still far from her goal, because making a living from cooking isn't that easy. Haruki Shindo explains that his improvised dishes don't cost more than a copper coin, and that simply wanting to swing a knife, becoming. He says and lists that it is necessary to buy products, regulate the price of the dish, find a place, equipment, assistants, and also train them. The girl says and then says that even Haruki-san has difficult tasks. The man listens. The woman asks if they'll be leaving this city soon and where they'll go next. Haruki Shindo asks to continue. He then explains that they should first head south, where the nearest city is, and they'll search for information about the four gods. The man asks if this means tomorrow will be the last day the cafeteria will be open. The man says it's very tasty. The boy with wings says it was delicious yesterday, but today it's even better, and the man with pointy ears says it's the first time he's tried something as delicious as his brother's dish. Haruki Shindo asks if they came yesterday too, and the man with pointy ears says yes, of course. The girl apologizes. The girl says that they're already closed and makes a kia sound. He says Rin-san in surprise. He remains silent, looking forward. Cyclops reveals that the hero is the very same chef who actually sells food outdoors. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't think a poor chef can pull off anything useful, but he sees that he's not just a poor chef. He says he'll pay, but asks if the other guy is confident in his abilities. The girl with cat ears stands behind Haruki and remains silent. A girl with cat ears tells Haruki Shindo that there are such beautiful fish in the pond. Haruki Shindo asks if they're tasty. The man asks if such fish are edible, to which Haruki Shindo replies that you won't know until you cut them. The man says he brought the cook. The three walk down the hallway. Haruki Shindo says he can't afford to relax. The man tells him to let them in. The man says that the hero is the one, and has come after all. He asks if he is Asame-san. The man announces that her name is Asame Toya and that she is the head of the Asame Society. Haruki Shindo and the girl listen. He explains that the job isn't complicated and just requires a small favor. The girl grabs Haruki's hand. The girl says that if it's anything dangerous, she'll refuse immediately. A man asks his daughter to cook something she can eat. Haruki Shindo and the girl listen to him. The man informs his daughter that she will only be able to eat what she can cook, and explains that she is not his biological daughter, but the beautiful bride of his eldest son, and he is trying to do what he can. He tells his daughter. The man asks for forgiveness. Asame Togo introduces himself as the junior commander of the Asame Society and thanks them for coming to listen to his request despite the urgent call. Haruki Shindo introduces himself as a cook and says he's already understood the situation somewhat from his conversation with Asame's father. Asame Togo says that in that case, he'll tell them. He explains that although they had various pre-wedding meetings, their marriage is considered political, but when he first met Eliza, he immediately fell in love. He explains that his wife Eliza got married and have been in a marital relationship for a year now, he says. Haruki Shindo says that perhaps his words sounded unconvincing, but she is truly a wonderful person, kind and simple, and has never complained about all the useless formal traditions of society. He then explains that perhaps what he meant was that she has problems with eating, her husband. The man says that they understand the situation. The guy explains that if it were different, he would not have been invited here, and he says that he already understands where this is all heading, because in the past world this was not an uncommon case, and the only question is how large-scale the situation is. The man explains that his wife is a very picky eater, eating neither meat nor fish, and he tries to please her with an unbalanced diet. He explains that he remembers that centaurs do indeed not eat meat, but his wife is just an elf, Haruki Shindo says. He says she doesn't eat meat or fish, even though they're so delicious, and confirms this. He then explains that she also doesn't eat eggs or any seafood, and can't eat anything but grains and cereals. The man is surprised that she doesn't even eat. Haruki says that even eggs come in different varieties, and the girl says she couldn't live like that. The man explains that she doesn't eat all kinds of eggs or distinguish between unfertilized and fertilized ones for her diet, and that his job is to prepare a menu for his wife, but he doesn't recommend forcing her. The man agrees that it's important to her and says he feels the same way. Haruki Shindo explains that he simply wants to do everything he can as her husband and is willing to do the same as she does. He says that something has changed recently. The man explains that one day his father decided to express his understanding. He reports what she said, pushing the plate away, and explains that she won't eat it. The boy reports that it was a dish made entirely of vegetables, and it was delicious. The man explains that his father was angrier than ever that day. Haruki Shindo reports that he eventually began to think it was just her being moody. He explains that it's unlikely to be just moodiness, but he understands his anger. The man explains that it doesn't seem like the kind of job he'll be able to handle quickly. The man explains that his wife has been cooking for herself for some time now, and her diet consists only of herbs and grains. The man with wings says that he's afraid that if she continues to eat like this, she'll one day fall ill. The man with wings turns to Haruki and asks him to do the same. Haruki Shindo says he knows that if someone cooks for him, he can turn any food into the most delicious dish his wife will ever want to eat. The man asks for his request to be accepted, as his wife's life may depend on it, and explains that this is precisely why he's making this request. He says he refuses. The man states that there are reasons why he cannot agree to do exactly what they want, and explains that he understands the problem. Haruki Shindo asks if he'd like to choose and cook food for his wife. The girl stands in the hallway, looking out into the garden. The woman asks if she understood correctly that this is Eliza-san. The woman explains that she had already heard about the man's situation from her father and that he had ordered her to cook for him. The man asks who she is and introduces himself as a cook named Shindo Haruki. The girl asks what they think. Haruki says he made a vegetable stir-fry because he heard the girl likes vegetables. The girl explains that she does, but asks him not to worry because there are no roots or onions in the dish. The guy asks Haruki Shindo how it went. Haruki Shindo reports that, as he thought, there was nothing left on the plate. The man says that sometimes she can eat what's offered to her, but there's a chance she ate it because the dish didn't contain any ingredients she didn't like. He says the rumors about you weren't lying. Haruki Shindo tells Togo-san that the food that Eliza-san refused earlier. The guy asks if there were any of these vegetables, and says that if you think about it, it seems like they were there, and also wonders if Eliza was asked. Haruki Shindo says he simply guessed, and was watching Eliza-san's reaction. The man says it's wonderful. He's already tried asking her what she doesn't like, but she either doesn't want to talk, or can't figure out what she doesn't like. The man says that he was able to understand a lot from his story. He explains that it is too early to draw conclusions, and that he should determine which vegetables she doesn't like, so that in the future. Haruki Shindo says yes, so that Eliza-san can eat well and completely. The guy says he's more than sure it won't be that easy to get a list of unloved vegetables. Haruki Shindo says that perhaps being completely alone in a completely different place with almost complete strangers may have affected her diet, but he doesn't know for sure. He explains that it's a very delicate and complex matter, and it's not a given that she'll be willing to try to eat what she's eating. He informs Togo-san that he will need his help. Haruki Shindo says it's for your wife's sake. The girl tells them there's a room in the house where they can hide, and explains that they can hide there if someone comes. The girl explains that there's a window in the room through which they can escape. The girl asks if they first met Togo-san during official meetings. The woman reports that they first met when she was 13, and at first he seemed like a frightening creature. The woman says that she later found out that he was just nervous, and the girl says that it's great and is even jealous. The woman asks Rin-san what her relationship is with Haruki-san, reminding him that they're on a trip together. Rin-san is surprised and clarifies what "we" means. The girl with the ears explains that their relationship is a little awkward, but it's their relationship. Rin-san then asks him to stop. The elf asks what kind of relationship they have, and the girl with the ears says that she can't know the answer to that question. The girl says the man is also serious and simple-minded. Haruki Shindo explains that he often feels a bit silly and calls himself a culinary idiot, in a good sense, so to speak, and also says that he seems to understand them. The man explains. The girl says she's probably just a burden to him. The man explains that he needs to try harder, otherwise they'll think of me as a weirdo and then it'll all be over. The girl says that even though she knows she's weird, and the girl says that sometimes she wants to turn into a butterfly, or more precisely, even a caterpillar, so she can just lie on a leaf and not disturb anyone. The elf explains that the house is inhabited by a mistress who doesn't like uninvited visitors. The girl informs that if the mistress doesn't want to receive guests, they simply won't be allowed in. The girl says she likes meat and fish, so she can't understand her interlocutor's feelings. The woman says she doesn't think what the girl is doing is a mistake, but she doesn't consider it something bad or wrong. The woman explains that perhaps she just imagines it that way and asks if the girl thinks she. The guy says he's met a lot of different people who are weird in their own way, and the girl explains that they're all different. The girl says she's sure Haruki will think of something. The girl explains that there's no need to worry. The girl says they just met, but she's already worried about him from the depths of her soul. The woman says she's weird too. The girl asks if Haruki-san is trusted, and the seated woman replies that they are. The woman says she can rely on him more than anyone else in the world. The girl says it's a coincidence. The man adjusts his sleeve. Tree branches are visible. The woman says she has one too. The woman says there probably won't be dinner. The girl with cat ears tells them not to worry and just sit there, assuring them everything will be fine. The woman tells him he doesn't use the root and onion and wonders if he noticed these words. She also says that if everything is like last time, then if not. Haruki Shindo tells him that he will push him away forever. The girl says thank you for waiting. The woman announces that tonight's dinner is ready to be served. Haruki Shindo tells Togo-san that his appearance. The woman is surprised and stares open-mouthed. The woman asks him to forgive her. The man says that she is blushing and says that she is looking at him that way. Haruki Shindo tells Eliza that he was today's chef. Eliza says that's true and says, "Oh." The woman says the smell of the growing, juicy, ripe vegetables is enchanting, and the man says it is beautiful. The guy tells her it's not just a drink, but an elixir that can change her destiny. The girl explains that it looks delicious and asks her to try it. Haruki Shindo says there is no reason to be embarrassed, and the girl explains that she is actually. The woman says she thinks it's called a ripe vegetable parfait and explains that Togo-san prepared the dish. The man says that such trendy dishes don't suit him. The woman says it's delicious. Haruki Shindo explains that making the puree and straining it is no easy task in itself, and Togo-san performed everything with extreme care. He explains that the puree is supported by a wax-gourd compote mixed with tomato mousse at the bottom of the dish. He says that when he asked Togo-san what dish he would like to cook, he said something sweet, just like his wife, and the man warns her not in front of her. The woman asks if Togo-san really cooked it. The man looks at the woman. The girl says that I have long forgotten the concept of delicious food. The woman says that I have long forgotten the concept of delicious food. Haruki Shindo says that he truly loves nature and wants to protect it, and the girl says that she has always loved delicious food. The woman reports that she even feels better somehow and laughs that she just ate. He explains that beans contain a lot of proteins, very similar to meat proteins, and dairy products are rich in vitamins and are important for the body. Haruki Shindo informs Togo-san that he has taught her some additional dishes, all of which are edible. The girl asks if it can be substituted for meat. They say that beans are even called greenhouse meat, so entrenched is it in culture, and they explain that it will be much healthier than meager rations of porridge. The boy addresses the girl named Eliza-san. Haruki Shindo remains silent. The girl asks if she can tell Togo-san and then explains that if they don't understand her, they will most likely refuse, but she wants to believe him and believes that he will accept her. Upper right, the girl says she wants to be with him forever. Below, she confirms this with the word yes. Lower right, Haruki Shindo addresses Togo-san. Togo-san explains that he can't understand why Eliza-san refused the dish he served her, even after learning what vegetables it was. He explains that the reason she accepted beans, wax-gourd, and even some dairy products is because she did not accept onions and other root vegetables. The man says that it cannot be. The woman explains that the onion and root vegetable give rise to their flowers, which are the basis for the plant, and reports that once harvested, the plant dies completely. Eliza-san wants to live in a world where she doesn't have to kill anyone. The guy says they're dying, but isn't that just a growth? The man says they're dying. Haruki Shindo says that only renewable products were used, and explains that, if you think about it, that's exactly what it is for today's dish. Despite her suffering, she gave life to the nature around her. Haruki Shindo tells Eliza-san that he takes her hand. The man says he's so proud she's his wife, and I start talking. The girl listens, at first with surprise, then with a smile and tears in her eyes. The guy tells Togo-san and Eliza-san that she is. Haruki Shindo says yes, and explains that she is an elf with the kindest heart in the whole world and a wife he can boast of. The man says it all worked out because Togo-san worked so hard for Eliza-san. The man asks if he cooked it himself, and the boy explains that he's grateful for taking care of her. The man denies it. The man says, "Ew." A man approaches Haruki Shindo, asking him to tell him about the vegetables Eliza doesn't eat, and says he'd like to grow more of them. Haruki Shindo replies that he'd be happy to do so. The two men tell her that working in the fields will help her strengthen her body, and communicating with the creatures will strengthen her mind. He hopes that she will begin to consider this place her home, and the people living here her family. The woman says she doesn't know how to thank Haruki. The man and woman say that if they hadn't met Haruki, they probably would have gone crazy, and that their hearts were melted by Togo's love. Haruki explains that he simply shared a few recipes. Haruki Shindo says it's wonderful, and the man says they understand each other so well. The girl says that if only he could understand a girl's heart a little better. The boy says they need to go. The man asks if it's true that they're heading to the Great Four Gods. The woman explains that they decided to head south first. The man explains that Suzaku's. A man and a woman say they can give recommendations, and that the influential ones are their close acquaintances. The man confirms that this is true. The guy says that this is the least he can do for the girl's help. Haruki Shindo explains that the letter is addressed to Mr. Kageyama and reports that it was delivered to the library. The man explains that Mr. Kageyama is currently busy and asks them to wait. Haruki Shindo and the girl wave goodbye. He says that now they know where to go and everything is going pleasantly smoothly, and the girl says that there is no need to talk about it. The man makes a sound of agreement. The guy says he has some onigiri and offers it to the girl. The girl says she's very hungry and thanks the guy. The girl explains they haven't eaten since this morning. The girl is surprised and says there are vegetables inside. Haruki Shindo reports that he tried stir-frying vegetables since Eliza-san gave them fresh ones. She says the vegetables are warm and taste good. He tells Rin-san to look at something, then he makes a sound of surprise, Haruki Shindo reports that this is Mount Shin-u. He says he came here to play the guitar and announces that there will be a concert tonight. The girl says she's also going to the concert and hopes he has a good time. Haruki Shindo says it looks comfortable, and the girl says it's so high up, it looks like there are even birds sitting there. Haruki Shindo laughs. The girl wonders what to do, and Haruki Shindo suggests walking along the edge. He says that someone has come to the Mountain of Birds. Someone goes further and enters the land of Shin-u-sama, and only someone who knows comes here. The masked men report that someone is there. The guard informs them that they are not suspicious at all and have come with a recommendation from the head of the same family. Haruki Shindo says he is Haruki-san. The guard remains silent, examining the documents. The woman says to follow her. Haruki Shindo announces that the temple is closing and suggests they go home. The woman explains that today is a holiday and the temple will be open until late at night. The man says he didn't know about this and thanks her for the information. The man says that Shin-u-sama is waiting for him. He looks ahead. The image contains no text or speech from the characters, only an architectural interior. Haruki Shindo says they've arrived. A man and a woman look up. The final panel shows a flower in a vase next to a candle. The guy with wings says that he was waiting. He reacts to this. The man asks if Haruki Shindo knew he was coming, or if he knew. Haruki Shindo says he knows he's coming. The man asks if they knew he was coming. The man notices a strong pressure, which is very different from Tamamo-san. He says he knows what the man has on his belt, and even though it's a modified shape, he knows it because they created the blade. The man says he knows everything and all the sins hidden in his soul. The girl and the man are silent. The woman is silent. The woman says it's a joke. The boy and girl say in surprise. The girl says that it really is a knife, and Haruki Shindo laughs and says that it's really something. He says he just took it out and explains that it's kind of logical, but it's surprising. Haruki Shindo explains that the blade was made many, many years ago in the finest blacksmith shop in Wanakuni. He explains that the blade is inlaid with his feather, a white tiger fang, a tortoise shell from a genba, and a blue dragon scale. He explains that this is the finest sword, forged using special ingredients along with a special metal, and states that this is the holy sword. The woman explains that for the sake of global stability and harmony, beings were chosen to protect this world from invaders who betrayed their oath. She says the sword wasn't given to simpletons and asks if Haruki Shindo understands this. Haruki Shindo explains. He says that he is still immature and came here to become worthy of the blade, and also does not want his path of the sword to fade into the background of the path of the cook, and this is what he desires. The man also reports. The girl and the woman listen. Haruki Shindo says that this is his path now, and that he has sworn to carry the holy blade and the history of holy swordsmen upon his shoulders. The man explains that it's clear that Haruki has the blade because he is simply a holy swordsman, but the fact that Haruki chose the sword doesn't mean. He says he's interested in what he needs to do to be recognized. The girl says she thought it should be obvious. The girl and Haruki Shindo drink in silence. The winged character explains that since Haruki Shindo is a chef, he should prepare something delicious and adds that that's all. He says that it would make your mouth water, and the girl explains that no, it wouldn't drip, but flow in streams. A guy and a girl are sitting on a tatami. The guy says that's it. The woman with wings explains that yes, well, then Haruki Shindo wants the dish to be made from ingredients that grow here and says it's not difficult. The woman says he will have exactly 1 month to prepare the most delicious dish of her life and specifies that it is 1 month. The image has no text or characters, only a landscape with a river and rocks. The girl reports that she feels like this is not a normal cooking task, but something with serious consequences. The girl says, a month seems long, but at the same time, not so long. Haruki Shindo replies that he doesn't say. The girl explains that the main thing is to cook something delicious, and then everything will be fine. Haruki Shindo says that Haruki-san's cooking is the most delicious in the world. The girl expects a masterpiece, and this time he thanks her. He says she's right. The girl says that just as a warrior going into battle entrusts his life to the sword, so she must entrust her life to her knife. Haruki Shindo informs him that if he fails, serious consequences await, possibly even the loss of his life. He explains that this time the platter will be. He asks how the dish is, and says it's Japanese quail stew. The woman offers to pour tea and asks if she liked it. He says he can't be fooled and calls the dish suitable for Shindo-sama. The girl remains silent, holding her chopsticks. Haruki Shindo says that, He asks what Mr. Suzaka usually eats. The woman explains that this is a prying for information. The woman says it's best to take it slow and ask in person in the forest. Haruki Shindo says it's in the forest. The man laughs and says, okay, okay. The character says it's only 1 month and asks what the person will do. He then explains that at this rate the person will lose everything. The upper right text states that the action takes place one day in Owari at Suzurao Castle. A woman talks about the scrolls she holds in her hands. Haruki Shindo says, while straining and pulling something upward with effort. His hand touches rolled-up carpets or mats. The woman says she's feeling hungry, and he says it's a sign she's feeling well. He explains that it's only been 6 months. The woman asks the girl if she is bored, and the girl says that she is. And quite honestly, they say that the dish at the competition was exquisite, and there was no one who did not admire it. The woman agrees and says it was quite tasty. The man asks if it was enough, and Haruki Shindo explains that in his heart there is one dish that will always be number one. The guy says he always loves to eat something strong. The girl replies that he absolutely loves it. The woman remains silent. The man explains that the series is currently cooking in the kitchen. The girl confirms that yes, there is. The woman speaks to Mrs. Tamamo, and Mrs. Tamamo laughs. The man says he is very hungry and that today's menu includes boiled potato, chestnut, and pumpkin soup, and also says that he has done a lot during the day. A guy with long dark hair says it feels like he's forgotten something. A man with pointy ears yells that it's been known for a week and calls the guy a bastard. The man with pointy ears, the woman with ears, and the wolf-like man discuss how the atmosphere. A woman asks Soraya if she's there. A man with a cigarette and a woman with animal ears exchange a few words. A woman in uniform smiles and talks to a man at the counter. The woman reports to Ms. Iris. The woman asks if there was anything wrong with dinner. Haruki Shindo says everything was fine and he came to tell Ms. Tamamo. The woman says she needs to prepare something delicious and uplifting for tomorrow, adding that it's all. The guy asks for something to cheer him up and says it's impossible again. The girl asks if he can handle it. The guy replies that he's reliable. The guy explains that they need something not just tasty, but something that will lift their spirits. The girl says that Haruki would probably come up with something truly incredible right now. The woman says she shouldn't lose heart and needs to pull herself together. The woman explains that this time she must use everything she's learned from Haruki since she's been with him the longest. Haruki says she must use everything she's learned from him. The guy says he'll make the most suitable dish for Mrs. Tamamo. The girl says Haruki Shindo says it's the same. The woman reports that the fish is quite unusual and explains that the aroma is wonderful, but nothing bad. Her fish has always been considered a delicacy. The woman says the flavor is so contrasting and so distinct. The girl covers her mouth silently. The man asks how the girl is doing. The man explains it's all about the garlic. Haruki Shindo reports that she boiled and sliced garlic cloves and rubbed them on the fish, thus enhancing the flavor. She says garlic is a medicine and supposedly good for digestion. The woman says that when you cook the dish, it turns out very tasty and adds that it is tasty and healthy. What could be better? The girl asks what could be better. The man explains that the skin was more crispy and the inside was juicier and wonders if this is the same, strong. The woman says it's not bad, it's really uplifting and graceful, magnificent. The girl says it's working. The girl says yes, she did it. The woman explains that she thinks the girl is starting to look like Haruki. The girl is surprised and asks what she means. The woman says there's no need to worry because she's always there and ready to help. She explains that together they can overcome any difficulties and achieve success. The woman says that despite the torment and suffering, he is moving forward, which is truly admirable, and thanks to him, the Owari can develop, and this dish is proof. The woman says that from now on, it is the man's responsibility to pamper her with delicacies so that she can rule well. The man with. The girl vows she won't give up the opportunity to learn something new and develop further. The woman smiles. The woman asks if something happened to Haruki and says that the woman does look like him. The girl replies that no, nothing happened and nothing at all. The woman says that many different kinds have just fallen from the tree. Haruki Shindo explains that in ancient times they were boiled and eaten. The woman is surprised that they are edible. Haruki Shindo explains that it depends on the type, but if you boil them with rice or use them as a filling for a cake, they will be delicious. The guy tells Rin-san to look ahead, and the girl says that here and here. Haruki Shindo explains that these are leaf masks. The girl says it's fun. He says that it seems to be the same mushroom that the priestesses were talking about, and explains that it will be better to ask again later. Haruki Shindo says hello and asks how things are. Suzaku-sama says he'll be able to make something tasty, to which he replies that it hasn't worked yet. He reports that Suzaku-sama's wings have gotten smaller, and Suzaku-sama explains that of course they have gotten smaller, otherwise he wouldn't have passed, and the guy reports that they picked a lot of fruit today, and Haruki Shindo says that's good. The girl says she won't be swayed by flattering words. He explains that he is completely honest. He tells her that the soil is rich, watered and fertilized, and talks about the graceful cycle of life, in which animals and plants thrive, strong and resilient. The woman explains that such a scene is only seen on lucky occasions at this time of year. She then explains that Haruki Shindo is the chef chosen by the Holy Sword, and asks if he was expecting her here. The woman warns Haruki Shindo to prepare to lose his life and demands to see what he's capable of. The girl refuses and says that she didn't come to fight, and if she does fight, she'll do it her way. The man asks, "What?" Haruki Shindo says a chef's knife should only bring happiness to beings. The girl says, "Humph." Haruki Shindo explains that it's best to take your time and ask in person in the forest. He asks Suzuka-sama what kind of food she usually eats, and Suzuka-sama answers with a question about the food. The woman laughs and says she doesn't eat human food. She explains that she hasn't tasted food for hundreds of years, and that the forest's delicacies are enough for her. The woman explains that the birds pecking at berries, the monsters hunting, and the wriggling worms, the entire forest is her feast. Haruki Shindo says he wants nothing more than human war and slaughter. He explains that, by eating this forest and loving it, he desires nothing more than what he has. He asks, "What taste means, man?" The girl explains that it's the feeling that occurs when food touches the tongue, or the pleasure that comes to the brain after eating. Haruki Shindo says that taste gives life, and that the land that surrounds this life is what taste means. The girl explains that within this system, there shouldn't be any unholy concepts like dish. She says it's all pointless, and no matter how delicious the guy's dish, she'll never acknowledge the necessity of dishes. The girl says she feels sorry for the guy, and the guy replies that if he keeps his knife. The girl asks if she can confirm the need for the dishes exactly 1 month after she's cooked them, and immediately responds to her own question. The man explains that he believes in nature's providence and the power of cooking. Haruki Shindo says he's willing to bet his life that cooking will change his mind. He announces that the cherries are ripe, and the girl explains that they can be picked. He says the cherries are delicious and asks the girl to try them. The man tells 2 girls that the festival will soon begin and invites them to participate. Several girls are catching butterflies in the forest. Haruki Shindo says he won't hide the fact that he's afraid of dying. He explains that in this world, at this time, it's not just fighters who risk their lives. In forests, rivers, seas, and cities, creatures are reported to be struggling to survive. The girl says that before her, someone received unprecedented power from the god of this world himself, but doesn't know what it means to put your life on the line. Haruki Shindo tells this. He says he is not going to give up. A boy walks down the hallway. A girl tells Haruki Shindo that it seems everything is ready. The girl wishes Haruki good luck and asks him to try his best. Haruki thanks her and promises to do so. Haruki then tells her that he can't tell her about the circumstances. Haruki Shindo says he's been thinking about it. The girl says he seems afraid. He explains that God himself is in front of them, and surprisingly, he's even nervous. But everything will be fine. The girl says that only Haruki-san can definitely handle it, and she believes in it. Haruki Shindo speaks to Rin-san, then thanks her. Haruki Shindo reports that it's truly impressive. He says that the trembling inside his heart has stopped. He should not be afraid. His knowledge and faith are valuable, so there is no need to be afraid. The girl says she'll definitely return. Haruki Shindo leaves. He approaches a group of people. A woman with wings tells him to begin and warns him not to expect mercy. Haruki Shindo says he understands. He puts his hand on his chest, then picks up a knife and begins cutting tomatoes. He says that the holy blade and the bearer's heart can have such a strong connection. The girl listens. The top panel shows the knife cutting meat. Haruki Shindo says a chef with a holy blade is a curiosity. He explains that on the plate is raw ham decorated with wildflowers and tomato juice. The girl asks what it is. The girl asks what kind of dish it is, and the man asks to use a spoon. The woman says there's a flower and a bubble on top. The woman eats it with a spoon. The girl is silent. The girl says it's delicious and explains that the bubble bursts inside, releasing the aroma of meat that spreads throughout the mouth. The girl says it doesn't matter. The guy with wings explains that he can't eat meat because it belongs to living beings, and explains that he doesn't want to hurt others. The girl is surprised and says she can't believe it all happened so quickly, and asks what this magical dish is. Haruki Shindo explains that the dish is made from venison ham caught in the mountains and doused with a pre-prepared broth, then cleaned and cooled. The girl says that her forest speaks for itself and that it embodies the very nature of the mountains. She explains that this plate embodies the very meaning of Nouvelle cuisine. The girl says that it reveals something she didn't know about her nature. Haruki Shindo explains that this phrase means new cuisine and aims to present food differently than the old one, while prioritizing the creativity and originality of the dishes. He explains that this time he had to break the accepted boundaries and the wide range. The girl asks if this is forgotten. He says that he spent the whole month in the arms of nature. Haruki Shindo says that there are more than just ingredients for dishes around us, but nature, its air, trees and their branches, and so much more to be observed and studied. He explains that perhaps, compared to several hundred years, his month may seem like just a moment, but in that month he says that words alone aren't enough to describe everything he's learned, and that's why everything he's received from the forest is here, on the plate in front of them, helping to describe it. He explains that this dish conveys a desire to learn and look at nature again. The girl says that if that's the case, the woman says that in this plate she was able to discover another side of her nature and a new taste. She acknowledges that this blade of the four gods now rightfully belongs to Haruki Shindo and advises him to use it skillfully. Haruki Shindo informs him that it would be a loss for him to simply admit it. The girl thanks him for the prepared dish and hands him a feather. He is surprised by the feather. The girl explains that it is her vermilion feather and warns that an entire kingdom could be bought for it. Haruki Shindo says that the door leading to another world has opened. He explains that it happened because he entered it. The woman says she's lived for many millennia, but this world still never ceases to amaze her. He says it's very interesting. Haruki Shindo explains that Suzaku's confession has more meaning than the words of the confession itself, and states that it means he has become even closer to becoming the true bearer of the Holy Blade. The woman says that perhaps he hasn't realized it yet, but sooner or later understanding and change will come. Haruki Shindo says she wonders what this means. The man says this is Suzaku-sama's feather. Haruki Shindo explains that not everyone is capable of being recognized as one of the four gods. The girl says it's so shiny and so beautiful. The man says, "Nya?" The girl says that everything happened thanks to him, but this time she definitely didn't do anything and laughs. The girl says she's very happy. The man explains he can't afford to relax. The girl says he has to take care of himself. Haruki Shindo says she didn't. The girl asks why. He announces that this is chapter 27. The animal-faced man extends his hand, and he places a coin in his palm. The girl stands next to Haruki and watches what is happening. The woman says she's heard it's not a big town, but it's quite lively, and invites them to come and visit, promising it's cheap and they won't regret it. The man says two highways merge here. The guy explains that at one point they decided to make a transfer point at the confluence, from which a boy with a headband tells a man with a wolf's head that he'll give him a discount if he gives him his pearl as a gift. Haruki Shindo laughs. A girl in a maid costume and a man with a backpack watch silently. The guy asks permission to take some potatoes. The girl replies that it is possible. Haruki Shindo says it's prosciutto cotto gnocchi in a creamy sage sauce. The guy announces that he has 2 servings left and it's time for them to try it, and the girl excitedly asks if they can have some. The woman tells him that the customers have finally run out. Several people express admiration for the food and are surprised that they've never had anything like it. Haruki explains that he usually has to cook with leftover ingredients, but when it's delicious, the ingredients cease to matter. The girl is happy that Haruki's dishes sell quickly, so tasting them is a joy. Haruki apologizes. The girl says the dish is very tasty and is surprised, asking what's in it. Haruki Shindo reports that they had some good potatoes, so he mashed them and made dumplings, then stuffed them with meat and boiled it all, and that's how the dish came about. The girl is surprised, asking where the guy got the meat and when he managed to prepare it. He explains that, thinking about a dish for Suzaku-sama, he decided to stock up on meat and ended up using it here. He adds that, afterward, Suzaku-sama ordered more portions for everyone. The girl says that while working at the cafe, when she woke up, Haruki Shindo was already cooking something, and when she went to bed, he was still working. Haruki Shindo says goodnight and good morning. Haruki Shindo explains that he was doing what he enjoyed. The girl. He says that in this house he can rest peacefully and recharge his batteries. He explains that no one will disturb him or bother him here. The girl says that dinner is ready and turns to Haruki. The girl says she asked the hotel owner and was allowed to borrow the kitchen. Haruki Shindo yells that she's doing this. Haruki Shindo asks what she's doing. The girl explains that it's her job to calculate expenses and income, and if she's distracted for just a second, he's back to work. The man says he simply had nothing better to do. He says that he sees the girl has prepared something anyway and thanks her. The girl replies that. The girl tells him to put the plates on the table next to the money. Haruki Shindo says it's delicious. The girl laughs and says she's a master of stew. He reports that in addition to the chopped vegetables, there also seem to be boiled vegetable peels. In the top right corner, it explains that this method extracts more juice from the vegetables, making the broth tastier. The girl says that Haruki just figured out the secret ingredient in her grandmother's stew and even pulled out all the peels, and Haruki asks for forgiveness. The girl remarks that. The girl says that cooking is not about the taste of a cafe, the taste of home, the taste of food that you have eaten many times or tried once. The woman explains that cooking is food made with love and care, something that touches the heart, or a taste that remains only in memories. The guy listens. The girl smiles. On the plate are 2 buns and a few pieces of vegetables. Haruki Shindo says that the taste of the stew Rin-san cooked will forever remain in his heart. Rin is surprised and excited. The girl tells Haruki that it's somehow unfair, and Haruki asks what exactly is unfair. The girl explains that he's simply not aware of his actions, which is bad, and it becomes unclear. Haruki Shindo says that it's bad. He says that, nevertheless, he really likes this very trait in her and asks her to stay the way she is. The girl says that's exactly how it will be. He asks if that's okay, and the girl confirms. Haruki Shindo explains that getting up early has become a habit, and the girl says that preparing means getting up early. Haruki Shindo says they'll be walking a lot today and confirms that it's onigiri. The girl calls Haruki Shindo by name. The girl says that since it's onigiri, even she can help. The man says, "Well, sir," and rolls up his sleeve. Haruki Shindo explains that these are regular onigiri and warns to be careful as the rice is hot. The girl asks if she can make the same and wonders if these are special onigiri. Haruki Shindo thanks her and confirms that she can. The man asks Byako if he understood correctly. He tells Rin that she is the embodiment of fearlessness and reminds her that he is, after all, a god. The girl asks what this god is like, addressing him. The girl says that, if it comes down to it, Haruki Shindo will have many more battles and asks if there will be another battle. Haruki Shindo replies that, who knows? The girl explains that she's just looking forward to a delicious breakfast in the morning, and that's all. He explains that he now understands the joy chefs feel when their cooking makes people happy. The girl says that's why she'll cook for them sometimes and asks if he'll let her. He says, yes. The girl announces that there is soup cooking in the pot and explains that it should be delicious. Haruki Shindo says to go left at this fork. The girl listens. The boy says it's good that Suzaku-sama gave them the map, but the girl tells him not to mention it. The man explains that he heard the village Byako-sama Blessed is quite popular and thinks it won't be hard to find. Haruki Shindo says the problem is whether Byako will agree to meet them herself. She explains that he wrote the invitation, but the decision to meet them is no longer up to him. The girl hopes it will be a good creature, and he hopes so too. He says that it seems to be her, and the girl explains that this is the village where Byako-sama is. The man announces the name of the village, Hako. The girl eats 2 large pieces of food and smiles. The guy asks if it's possible. The man says the guy wants to meet Byako-sama. The man explains that the guy doesn't seem to be from around here. The man explains that he's a stranger from who knows where and wants to meet Byako-sama right away. The man says Byako-sama will be happy to see Haruki Shindo, and he thinks they'll find her in the village center. Haruki Shindo says they were told Byako-sama would be there. The girl says it was easier than she expected. Haruki Shin. The guy asks if this is sumo, and the girl says, what passions? The man laughs and says, excellent, excellent. The woman tells him to take it from the right and put it down. Haruki Shindo explains that it's an accident, and the girl says that this must be Byako-sama. Haruki Shindo asks if she is Byako-sama. The woman says that now is the most interesting moment and asks him to wait. She asks what the man wants. The man asks who she is. The boy says it's Suzaku's feather, and it brings back memories. The woman explains that recognizing the bearer of the holy sword requires a ceremony, and the man remarks that it always happens solemnly. The guy says, the man asks, Haruki Shindo says he forgot his toothpick, and the man replies he'll get it right away. He says that here. The woman explains that she, of course, said toothpick, but was just joking and asks not to find fault, and Haruki Shindo asks, what? A woman screams that a sword has been turned into a knife and expresses bewilderment. A man asks what this means and demands an explanation. Haruki Shindo says that Suzaku-sama promised to give him a good account of his situation, but he seems worried. Then Haruki Shindo coughs. He says sorry and informs that he will explain right now. Haruki Shindo reveals that he is the man who delivered the holy sword and that he is a chef. A woman hits a man hard, knocking him back. The girl screams. The woman calls him an idiot and asks what kind of cook he is. A girl with cat ears tells Haruki Shindo that he is okay. He says that it seems so, and the girl says that he is bleeding and exclaims that it is blood. The girl reports that the boy immediately pulled his body back to mitigate the damage from the blow. Haruki Shindo says that if he were a chef, his head would already be rolling on the floor. The woman says she's asking seriously who he is. The woman says Haruki Shindo. Haruki Shindo and the girl say their name is Haruki-san. The girl says that Haruki-san is a cook and a very strong cook, and also asks not to hit him suddenly. He addresses the girl, calling her Rin-san. The woman says the male the female loves is a good male. The woman says that out of respect for the girl, she will accept this matter with the holy blade. The girl says, okay. The girl and Haruki Shindo ask for food. The woman says then, but if you bring scum. The woman says that instead of the garbage, she will take it to Haruki Shindo. Haruki Shindo accepts this. The boy with lion ears says the food is delicious, and he says he passed the test. The girl with cat ears and he looks surprised. A woman says the guy cooks well, and he says it's called pig plancha. Haruki Shindo says, Byako laughs and says he didn't understand anything. Haruki apologizes to Byako and asks what happened to him. Byako confirms that Haruki passed and gives him a perfect score. Haruki Shindo says he's strong and a good cook, and the girl asks what else he needs. The man explains that he doesn't like to get lost in his thoughts and that it's difficult to speak. He says he won't make promises like Suzaku. The man replies, "Ha!" Haruki says it's great that Byako-sama acknowledged him. The girl agrees that he's right. The woman says she's interested in seeing what they show her. Haruki Shindo responds with a question. The woman says she realized he's strong and notes his cooking and skill with a blade, but reminds him that he's already shown this to Suzaku. The man says that he trusts Suzaku and he recommended this guy, and also introduced him, giving the beginning of an acquaintance, and admits that perhaps he is suitable for the role of the owner of the Holy Blade. The woman says that now Haruki Shindo must show her something that Suzaku didn't. Haruki Shindo remains silent. The woman says that just having a blade is not enough. If you go around the world, you will find a couple more like him, and warns not to delude yourself, man. The woman says, grow up, and if you can't show it, then this is where your path here ends. Haruki Shindo laughs and says he knows something, and the man says that the hero is lucky that Suzaku didn't propose. The woman is surprised. He points and says he needs to please this girl with some cooking. The girl with cat ears asks if it's me. The woman with tiger features explains that it will be very easy then, and says that he cooks every time. Haruki Shindo reports that, nevertheless, the girl with tiger ears explains that if he doesn't make her happy, she'll die. Haruki Shindo and the girl with tiger ears react with surprise. The girl explains that he has a spot on his head and tries to remove it. He says it's not scary and smiles. A woman tells Haruki Shindo and the girl that they need to please this girl with their cooking. He says he has 10 days, and then he'll show him what he's accomplished. The woman says she expects good results from him. He's standing at a table with plates, and there's a picture of an oven next to it. Haruki asks him not to make such a complicated face and says everything will be fine. The girl says that with such a task, getting confession will be quite easy and asks if it's not easy to make her happy. Haruki ponders whether it's easy or not and warns that if he fails, he'll die. The girl says that. Haruki Shindo says it's really that easy. He says he brought sweet potatoes, and the girl with ears listens to him. The man says it's baked ribs. The girl says she loves meat and that it's a 100. The white fish is reported to be brisade, in sauce, and garnished with peppers. The girl says that's also delicious and that the fish is its most delicious meat. Haruki announces that it's tomato ratatouille. The girl says that it's probably the most delicious thing and that Haruki's cooking is the best. Haruki remains silent. The girl asks if something is wrong. Haruki explains that because she was always happy with his food, he never noticed one thing and wonders what would truly make her happy. The girl says it will definitely pass and that Haruki shouldn't worry. Haruki Shindo says he assumed he knew Rin-san's tastes, what ingredients she liked and disliked. He explains that he spent the most time with her. He says he knows a lot about Rin-san, but nothing more. The girl says that she knows absolutely nothing about her. The woman says it's good that Byako-sama lent them the house. The man says they have 10 whole days to spare and they can make themselves at home and relax. The man says they can even use the kitchen freely, and the woman says, that's wonderful. The girl says no. Haruki Shindo says she can't wait for his super dish. He says that he wants to understand the reason for such a task from Byako-sama. Haruki Shindo says he can't remember anything and says nothing comes to mind. The boy explains that he hasn't had a single thought about Rin-san and wonders why this is happening now. The man asks if Byako-sama noticed this. Haruki Shindo says he can make a dish Rin-san will like. The main ingredient will be meat, and then he'll season it, decorate it, and add the flavor Rin-san will love. Haruki Shindo says there are only 2 days left. He explains that he has a feeling that he asks if there's anything else he can do as a cook, and ponders whether or not. He takes the knife from its sheath. The man from around the corner says, The girl with cat ears says she's calling Haruki-san. Haruki Shindo looks at her. The girl continues to sleep. He looks away. The woman says the moon is beautiful and sake goes well under the moon. The girl announces that the cook has been recognized as a holy sword and begins to say, well then. The man explains that the young male must languish and be baked. Haruki Shindo greets Rin and says she's not looking very cheerful. Rin explains that she's been thinking about something all along. Haruki Shindo says that's not right because tomorrow is an important day and asks her not to make excuses. Rin is surprised he hasn't slept, the girl says. He says that if Byako-sama says he failed, he'll get really angry and say she's wrong. The girl says they won't be able to convince Byako-sama and tells him not to worry. He starts to wonder, what if? The woman says that no one else's cooking can bring her as much joy as Haruki-san's. She explains that even if a desperate situation arises and she wants to eat Haruki-san, the girl says that then she might as well eat herself too. Haruki Shindo asks why the girl is so worried. Haruki Shindo says that Rin-san can't do that. He says he doesn't know. Haruki Shindo says that even as a chef and wielder of the holy blade, he's not a professional at all, but a half-witted man, and he has no idea how to treat the girl. The girl says that even after everything Haruki said, she doesn't know who he is and apologizes. The girl approaches Haruki and asks him to tell her who he considers himself to be and what he thinks of himself. Haruki replies that he is a chef. The girl says that the answer is wrong, and Haruki Shindo asks, what exactly? He says that Haruki-san is Haruki-san, and in front of the cook, in front of the bearer of the holy sword, there is an ordinary human guy named Shindo Haruki. The girl says she loves this particular guy in him, and that she does too. The man listens. The man says, that's how it is. Haruki Shindo says that all this time, what he lacked wasn't the knowledge to please Rin-san, but the confidence. He explains that even the confidence to risk one's life isn't on the same level as this confidence. Haruki Shindo explains what he lacked, and that it was standing firm in the face of. Haruki says that the girl has opened his eyes. The girl says she's glad she could help. Haruki says they still have the whole day. The girl starts talking because Haruki Shindo says he's proposing a short date. The girl says wow and is happy. The man and girl report that there are a lot of strawberries. Haruki Shindo reports that strawberries are growing very well at this time of year. The girl comments on the wonderful smell. The man thinks he still can't get used to the fact that strawberries grow on trees in this world. The girl says they should definitely pick strawberries. The man suggests a little strawberry hunt. A girl asks what a strawberry hunt is. Haruki Shindo explains that there is no such thing as a strawberry hunt. He tells me that in his area, there are strawberry and other berry hunts, which are events where people pick the berries they like and eat them. The girl says that the hunt is incredibly delicious. She explains that during festivals, you can't find them everywhere. Haruki Shindo says festivals are a lot of fun because they have lots of shops and stalls selling all sorts of goodies and attractions. She says it's very interesting. The girl says that it would be a lot of fun to go to the festival with Haruki-san. He asks if something is wrong. The girl explains that she doesn't know how to say it. Haruki Shindo says he just realized it and isn't used to saying things like that, but the girl expresses bewilderment. He says that he likes Rin-san and that he loves her. The girl laughs and the man reacts. The girl says she didn't expect that. The girl laughs. Haruki Shindo says he said something strange and apologizes. The girl says that this is not true at all. He listens silently. The girl tells him to listen to her and explains that after such a statement, he simply has to cope. Haruki Shindo asks if this will cause any inconvenience, to which the girl replies that there won't be any inconvenience. He says that he's still, the girl says, and more. The boy explains that thanks to the other person's words, he understood that it was Byako-sama who was meant, and the man reports that Byako-sama said it as if it was the cooking that should please the other person. The girl reports that she is confident that she has no problems with cooking as an individual, and therefore this time she is not as a cook or as a bearer of the holy blade. Haruki Shindo says that by being himself, he will make the girl happy and steal her heart. The girl replies that since he's so confident, she'll have to accept the bet. The girl says that if it doesn't work out, they will both be eaten and asks them to remember this and also to try to steal it. He tells them to rely on him. The woman says she's a tigress who can jump very high and fast. The girl says it's truly impressive. Haruki Shindo stares ahead silently. He says that there is only one way to survive in this world, to become stronger. The girl and the man listen to him. The woman announces that the time has come. She says it's obvious the guy has been sweating a lot and asks if he's decided to show off anything. Haruki Shindo replies, yes, of course. The woman explains that it's understandable, he seems unwavering, and asks him to show off what he's accomplished. The woman says to begin and threatens that the interlocutor will either treat or become a treat, and then says that she will make a verdict with full responsibility. Haruki Shindo says that the most important thing is Rin-san, and today he will show them his true self. Then he says Byako-same's name and holds up his sword. The girl looks forward. He says he loves Rin-san. The man suddenly raises his hand. Haruki Shindo reveals that he didn't abandon him, but merely moved to another human world. He explains that he hired him as a cook at his cafe. The girl says it's amazing and asks what kind of techniques these are. The woman tells him so, and he remains silent. The woman says others saw her as a cook, while the boy explains that some saw her as a warrior. The man holds a knife with an ornate blade. The girl says the strawberries are frozen and that's impossible. Haruki Shindo reports that he's stopped the heat from the ingredients and is seeing a world of food he's never seen before. The girl explains that the chaotic movement of atoms shouldn't be cut, but rather their chaos should be stopped with a knife blade, removing the kinetic energy and heat. She explains that all this time she misunderstood herself and considered herself only a cook, but she was mistaken because Rin-san was always looking. Haruki Shindo says that he will do this and prepare the dish not as a chef but as Shindo Haruki and convey his feelings through this dessert. He says it's caramel strawberries served with strawberry sorbet. He asks Rin-san to accept his feelings. The girl says it's unlike anything she's ever had and asks what it is. She explains it's like something you can eat with a spoon. The man says it's pudding and explains he made it himself. The girl says it's very tasty. The girl says she can't go on like this anymore and explains that she doesn't want to hurt others. The woman says it's delicious, very delicious. The man listens to her. The girl says it's just right. The girl apologizes and says it's really delicious, but the tears just come. The man reassures her and says even a fool would understand her joy. The woman asks Haruki what it is. Haruki remains silent. Haruki reveals that he made a dessert from the strawberries he and Rin-san picked and used a molecular-level skill to separate the atoms of the strawberries, turning them into a puree, and after cooling the puree, he was able to make a sorbet from the strawberry juice. Haruki Shindo says that in the end, our cherry on the cake was caramel strawberries. He says the taste is very good. The girl says the peel is so sweet and crunchy. Haruki explains that this dessert is served at the festivals he mentioned. The girl says it's because the strawberries are caramelized. Haruki explains that by melting the caramel and dipping the strawberries in it, he caramelized the strawberries, creating a caramelized coating. The girl, Haruki Shindo, informs Byako-sama that he recently prepared a dish for her to prove himself as the bearer of the holy blade. He explains that the dish may have confirmed him as a chef, but not as a person. The girl says that today she had to shed her chef persona to show her true self to another person. The man listens. Haruki Shindo says that a man who can't show his feelings even to his girlfriend without resorting to cooking is a real culinary madman, but there is no other way. He says he is Shindo Haruki. The girl listens. The guy says they're radiating youthful love so intensely that it makes him uncomfortable. The man laughs. The woman says Haruki has made it, and this girl is proof of that. The woman turns to Haruki and asks what he thinks is most important in their lives. The woman explains that the most important thing is not to lose oneself. Haruki and the girl with the ears express surprise. The woman says that if the girl doesn't have confidence, she'll never be better than her predecessors. The girl explains that before her is a great example of confidence, a being who has already been with her in both directions. The girl says she's always dreamed of becoming a maid and is looking forward to starting work, then explains that she'll almost never be able to meet Haruki-san. The girl says it's better to be with Haruki-san. Haruki Shindo says that Haruki-san is only Haruki-san. The woman explains that in order to turn the female towards him and for her to listen to him, he needs to show confidence, and only then will he stand level with her, just like he did today. Haruki Shindo explains that previously, when attempting the same, the person relied solely on their own strength, not on themselves. He suggests that perhaps this method was a step forward, but only for this person and only in their own world. The woman says that today he showed her what she wanted to see. The woman reports that at that same hour, Haruki Shindo finally took a step not alone, but with his dear creature. He says he can't believe it. The guy asks Byako if she knows about his. The guy says the conversation is over and asks if Haruki Shindo thinks someone else is demanding his attention. The girl addresses Haruki Shindo by name. Haruki Shindo says, Rin-san. The girl says that she could please have more, and he responds hesitantly. The girl explains that the dish is called crab soup. The man explains that he can't eat crab, and Haruki Shindo says he doesn't understand. The guy makes a sound, covering his mouth with his hand. He silently looks forward. Haruki Shindo says that, of course. On the top right, a man explains that he loves this human thing called profession. Below, a man explains that he lives among ordinary people and has seen life flow smoothly for a long time. On the bottom left, a man explains that, as a newborn, every being has its own pure I. Haruki Shindo explains that in life, you are predetermined by your role, your place of residence, and others begin to call you by your profession. He explains that the pure self is forgotten, and your profession becomes your everything. Haruki explains that this is precisely why he will never let go of the girl who managed to see his pure self. The girl says that philosophical discussions make her shoulders ache. The woman says, that's it, he's free. The man tells her to go his own way. The girl says the caramel strawberry was delicious. She explains that after tasting it, she immediately realized how much he loved her. Haruki Shindo comments that this sounds a little embarrassing. A cry of "Nyaha" is heard. He says that, in any case, it was already the second god and praises himself for a job well done. Then he says that even he himself somehow can't believe it. The girl exclaims in response, "Ho-oh-oh-oh-oh." Haruki Shindo says it's Byako-sama's fang and it's like a jewel. The girl asks if something's wrong. Haruki Shindo explains that it's his path. The boy replies that it's not. He says that maybe he's just been overcomplicating things. He says he wants to be straightforward about the path he's planning to take. The girl addresses him, calling him Rin-san, and suggests that when their journey is over, a girl screams that a guy is looking in the wrong direction. Haruki Shindo asks if she's sorry and if she's okay. The girl tells him to open his eyes. He and the girl with ears listen. The girl asks if Haruki Shindo is okay, to which he replies that yes, he is completely fine. Then Haruki Shindo quickly looks around. He says no. The girl says something is missing. Haruki Shindo says he doesn't know what to do. Haruki Shindo explains that Suzaku-sama and Byako-sama will kill him. The boy with mouse ears says he thanks Koba. Then the man with tiger stripes says he thanks him for his support. The girl with a long tail and the man with rabbit ears say they thanks him for his help. The right panel depicts a fish in a net, moving. In the left panel, Haruki Shindo says that there are many different animals and plants here. The woman says that, even though it's not the season now, when it comes, flying fish come here. He says he's tried flying fish before, but he'd like to try it himself. He asks if flying fish really do fly here. The man with the mask explains. Haruki Shindo says, this is flying fish hunting. The girl silently holds the fishing rod.